or accept that the country is doing much worse than it was when he took over. He also not accepting to agree that the way he has been leading Kenya for the last 2 years is not the right way to do so. So when you have somebody who cannot take accountability and responsibility for his actions, normally they resort to justifying and maybe trying to rationalize whatever is happening. Because take for example the Adani deal, there were all the red flags that were there that this company was fishy. All the evidence was there, but they chose to ignore it. They go on with the deals and make them. And now, when it comes now clear that nobody wants to deal with this guy all over the world, now they make an about that. Now, that's where now the problem is, because even our leaders who are not the president have been there, honing their support for Adani. Then when the president now agrees that, okay, we made a mistake here, then everybody now takes an about turn. It is a problem that we have in Kenya, not just for the leaders, and also for us citizens also, because right here we have Professor Kivutha Kibwana. I was hoping that Honorable Mother Karua would be on by right now, because uh, we tout her like an iron lady, a champion for democracy, and all those nice things. But the problem that we have as a country and also citizens is that we do not want to take responsibility or even accountability, even the way we speak. We have taken a point whereby we want to massage the egos of the leaders, and even when we have an opportunity like this to talk to these leaders respectfully without even bashing them and tell them the truth, we do not want to do that. Right now, we might talk very bad about the president, William Ruto, because he's not here. But if he was attending here, we would all be showering praises to him. So what I wanted to say, and I was hoping that Martha Karua would be here, because some of the messages that we have today are the creation of Honorable Martha Karua in 2007. We had an opportunity to kill impunity in the country in 2007. And Martha Karua, as a stalwart of the PNU government,
Did we lose the
Abdi,
speaker?
I think Geoffrey has dropped. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are trying to get Matakarua, but I think let us focus on the state of the nation. Let our main focus to be a state of the nation. What can we do? Everybody has a fault. Even us here, we are not perfect, And but how can we have a Kenya that is forging ahead and seeing we can have changes? I know a lot has been done, a lot has been happening. That is very true. But even with those faults, how can we make it better? Back to you, Abdi and Enter.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there is a question that has been coming up about the state of the economy, and I think the economy and the debt and how people are. But I think Kenya unsustainable public debt and the stagnation in economic growth, I think, has been there for some time, and we want to look at measures that the government or can adopt a short or medium term to balance debt
hello,
payment. Can you hear me?
am I still audible? It seems like I dropped from.
Yeah, Geoffrey, you dropped. So we are saying let us focus and uh, we invited Mata Karua. I think he's still not here. So uh, I'm trying to get hold on her. Let us focus on the state of the nation at the moment. Until she's here is when we can focus of what we want to comment about that. Okay.
Okay, so Geoffrey.
Okay, Mr. Abdi, I appreciate your concern, but again, what I was going to say, maybe briefly within 1 minute, is that if we are going to make if we are going to make progress in the country on how we are governed or matters development, then we must begin speaking the truth. We do not expect the president to speak the truth to be accountable if we citizens ourselves are not that. We have to begin making accountability. And when leaders come and we have a forum with them like this, we have to speak to them and tell them that no, you also have to take accountability for your past actions, because one thing that has caused a problem in our country, and even now we have a very bad state of the nation, is that we tend to forget about the past, the leaders past. We have people who have a very bad past of changing goalposts, lying. Then, when they come and ask for votes, we pretend like nothing have happened. So, Abdi, I want to end there, but if you want these conversations to make sense and also maybe produce any result, let us stop glossing around issues. Let us tackle issues head on and address these issues. If Professor Kibwana is here, has been a leader. If there's anywhere where he fault, we have to tell him that we faulted here. You have to take about accountability. If he has to apologize and change his way, he has to do so. Because the problem is, even if we chose somebody like Mother Karua, she has a very promising future in Kenyan politics. She's still relatively young, and she can be something in the future. But we have to tell her that you have to take accountability of the things that you did, because even up to today, just 6 years ago, she was still denying her role in the post-election violence. So we have to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Let me give the opportunity to Wanjiru, whose hands us up. Wanjiru, please go ahead.
Thank you, Abdi, and thank you to the speakers who've spoken before me. I just want to make a response to Geoffrey, who's just spoken. And first of all, just want to say that um, Kenyans are human beings, and we are not perfect people. Our leaders are not perfect. And the reason why we have the layer of accountability is because leaders are will make mistakes, and they make decisions based on sometimes advice and sometimes, so many other um, considerations, but they still make mistakes, and that's why we have a parliament that holds the government to account. Now, the only correction I want to make to Geoffrey is that as citizens, we are not being oversighted. So if we make mistakes as citizens when we go out and we clap to a leader or we praise these leaders, we are not being oversighted. Sometimes it's just the euphoria. Sometimes people get excited when they see these leaders. And it's not that it's something that we can start really questioning how people behave. Everybody has a right to decide how they behave and how they speak to the leaders. But we are not being oversighted. We are oversighting them. As citizens, we oversight our leaders. And if we feel that, they deserve some praise, we give it to them. But if they deserve to be criticized, then we do criticize them. Now, my comment I want to make is on the state of the nation. And I do recognize that President Ruto allocated 100 million to fight femicide. And I think that money, the allocation should have come through the right channels in Parliament, because although he can make these declarations, I think this has to go through channels, and maybe Professor Kibwana might correct me, but I think there are ways of allocating these budgets to different government departments who are, uh, who are going to be fighting femicide. But one thing that is very critical to me is that the state of the nation is in such a bad state that the mental health of the citizenry is at the lowest, and it's so bad. And that's why people are just, so frustrated, and people are taking, you know, action. Sometimes it goes in the wrong way, and sometimes they look at the weaker gender, and they end up, brutalizing. Although crime is high, but sometimes when you hear these femicide cases are happening domestically, you can imagine um, when the economy is so bad, the man in the house is the one whose ego is bruised, is the one who feels that, the weight is on his shoulders. And one little thing can cause somebody to do something that, sometimes they end up regretting. And I think there's a case where somebody stabbed the wife 18 times, or I don't know, chopped her 18 times. I don't know what the details are. But I think that this 100 million, it's not going to cover the effect of mental health as well as deal with the actual crime of femicide. I think one of the things they need to look at is the state of the mental health of the nation, because personally, I think that is one thing that needs to be funded properly as per the state of the nation. I think people are hurting. A lot of Gen Zs are hurting. A lot of, millennials are hurting. People are hurting. And this hurting is translating into mental health issues. And that is then translating into femicide issues. So I don't know whether Professor Kibwana can maybe comment on whether that declaration by the president is a correct way of addressing this femicide issue. Is that going to solve the problem? To me, I think that is not going to be a problem, solving the problem, but he's going to come back again on top of a vehicle and tell Kenyans that, I allocated 100 million. Even if nothing is going to happen, he's going now to go out in Harambes, in churches, on top of vehicles, saying that he's allocated this money. And that is how Ruto works. He does something like that, and then he's going to go around every time there are people talking about femicide, he'll be saying, I allocated this money. But he's not going to be accountable for what is happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanjiko, for your submission. Before we go to Professor, I will give the opportunity to Dr. Milton, one of our panelists who just joined us, to say an opening statement, and then we cycle back to the Professor. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdi, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address fellow patriots. I don't know whether I can be heard clearly. Abdi, are
Yes, you
you
can.
okay? So I don't want to be long because I want to do more listening today. I want to talk about two, maybe three things in very quick, um, so that I can be able to allow Prof to speak. What is the state of the nation as we speak? To be honest, we are a country that is broken at the moment, and that is the case because nothing seems to work, and especially the critical areas that concern the citizens. There is no service delivery, and all this is made worse because we have a leadership that refuses to take accountability, that would rather play mind games with the Kenyan people, and generally doesn't care. I want to, admit that I do not take William Ruto seriously. Whatever he says, I actually don't listen to him most of the time because of how in the past he has demonstrated that he would lie with a straight face. He would not take accountability. He has no integrity, and he has demonstrated uh, a high level poverty of leadership credential because he will throw everybody under the bus except himself. And that is what he has done with this, the State of the Nation address that he did. All I know is that I didn't listen to it. I have perused through the speech, and I don't think there was anything to write home about. That is a leader that takes no responsibility. He has no interest in being accountable to the Kenyan people. All he wants to do is to play mind games, blame everybody except himself, and he will not stop at anything. For him, this is a game. And as long as he retains power, he doesn't care about what the people think, whether they get services or they don't, whether their taxes are value for the people or not. That is not his interest. So again, um, what what do we as a people have as options? The people must continue to agitate. and in that agitation, we need to now take the war to him. Let me ask you, when the president comes in the State of the Nation address and says the Adani deals are now cancelled, without explaining to the Kenyan people, first of all, that what made it so difficult. So the question you have to ask, how accountable is he to the people? Because he has been pushing it. He is on record. He has had town halls where he's saying how he is not a madman to sell the airport. And Kenyans have been consistent. The courts have considered the merits of the Kenyans' agitation as was presented in the cases in court. And even and Prof would be able to tell us this, that for you to get conservatory orders, there has to be reason, some remote chance that you have a course of action and there is a prima facie case. So if what would have happened had Kenyans not been so consistent in saying Adani is a bad deal and we do not want them? So for him, it is a trial and error. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this. I am going to put my own pecuniary interests ahead of everybody. And if you cannot see it and complain about it, then I will have my way. That is exactly the kind of leader that we have in William Ruto, a leadership that takes no accountability. In a situation of a country like ours, where we have the most, arguably most progressive constitution in the world, you have a leader who is doing the things that William Ruto is doing. He has to go. What we must be able to do is that the country will continue regressing, the economic status of our people will continue on going south, and our, the education, is it transportation, critical infrastructure, service delivery in healthcare, I mean everything, nothing seems to work. We must be able to mobilize our people, and we need to say it is not working. Our country is in a deplorable state. How do we reclaim our country? That is the big question that we must ask ourselves right now. We cannot afford to engage in conjecture. And I'm saying this in response to what Geoffrey was talking about in calling out Honorable Karua and other people for being perceived to have had a role in the post election violence of 2007. I think what we need to do, we need to stick to the facts, we need to stick to what is proven, what is established, and we cannot um, drive public anger on the basis of propaganda and perceptions that are unestablished, especially from the past. We need to be honest with ourselves as a people as we try to address these issues. Right now, the elephant we have in the room is that we have a leadership that is not accountable, and the leadership that is not accountable is not integrity, does not have integrity, takes no responsibility. The country cannot move forward. Right now, the country is headed in the wrong direction, and that is just the summary of the state of the nation today. As Abdi pointed out, I think we need to get to a point where we ask ourselves in practical steps, and that has been my consistent message for the past few weeks. How do we get ourselves to a point where we now begin to look at specific practical deliverables on how we can reclaim the country, because we already know it is broken, it is headed in the wrong direction, and it is so because we have a leadership that has no interest of the greater nation that they ought to have. And I mean, that is just the summary of what there is. We will have an opportunity to look at the way forward and come up with the definite proposals that have clear timelines, clear roles and responsibilities on each and everyone, and how we can make our citizens more engaged, fellow Kenyans, to ask the deliberate, serious questions that we need to ask, and a citizenry that can play its role in saying Power belongs to us. If you do not exercise it as per our aspirations, as spelled out in the Constitution, then we will reclaim it and we will not have you continue to abuse us using our resources, using our power, and using reverse psychology and blackmail against the people. I will leave it at that point, Abdi. We can continue to answer questions that are asked specifically when we get to the way forward.
Thank you.
I drop now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Milton. Always is better to have you here, and you and Bonnie, you're doing an amazing job. And we are lucky, we are happy now. Honorable Mata Karua, she's here with us, and Senior Council. I know you are having technical issues, and I'm happy. We are trying to get you on all, and we are happy that you're here, so you can share the space to other people. I know many people are waiting Senior Council to address us. And I know many people knows Matakarua as Iron Lady, but I want to say that she has been here in this space for a while, since when she was a young girl. I was seeing interview last week with uh, Jeff K. In Citizen, and she explained how she came to the politics and to be a lawyer and everything. Matakarua, I know many people knows her, but I want to say that she has been here, making sure things are running well. And today we are lucky to have her to converse about the state of the nation. And Mata, we really appreciate you. And I know she's also a party leader that is not Kenya, and also she has come up with a book, and I know she'll explain why did she come with this book, and how can we get that book and get knowledge on this book. Senior Counsel, you can say hi to the audience. They have been waiting for you. You can just give open remarks, then we're going to give you a platform to share your idea on state of the nation. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone, and sorry that I've joined late. I'll give very few remarks because I don't know what has gone on in the last half hour. But I will say that our state of the nation, we are in a very, very bad place. Our constitution has been virtually suspended. The state of human rights, again, we are in a very dark place where the administration continues to violate human rights with abandon. Abductions by state agents, and these abductions, we once said in a presser with Professor Kibwana and others, that the state operatives who are in a squad, an abduction squad, are working in cahoots with state, with security agencies from Uganda and several other East African countries, and as far as DRC. Those who may have thought it was a joke, you saw for yourself last Sunday when Dr. Kizza Besigye was abducted from Nairobi. They tried to deny it, but the Ugandans have let the cat out of the bag. They are saying they went with him by road, and they were definitely given access and assisted by Kenyan security agencies. And this is not the first time. In July this year, 36 members of Dr. Besigye's party were in a training session in Kisumu and were similarly abducted, taken to Uganda and detained, and recently were released. Apart from that, our own nationals are being abducted every day by masked police officers or state agencies. We are told they comprise a few people from the army, a few from the police, and mainly Mr. Ruto's ethnic group, but there are a few others from other communities. And this is a squad that is operating outside of the police force. It is commanded from God knows where, but we suspect from the very seat of power. The state of economy, no good at all. We are sinking deeper and deeper into debt. Debt that is not being used to give services to Kenyans or to build the economy. Money that is being wasted for the comfort of those in power. We have seen the collapse of our health insurance, the NHIF. The Ruto regime ran it down in the 2 years they have been in power. In its place, they have brought Chief Shah, we don't know which is which, a system that after almost a month of being in operation has caused untold suffering. Maybe one day there will be an audit to know how many people have died or suffered because of it. But we have seen it in the media. Some have experienced it with loved ones. Education is in a mess. New funding model at the university, which we are all demanding should be withdrawn, that actually works against the children of the most vulnerable and is actually reversing gains in education. And it's not just at the university, secondary schools are suffering. The capitation is not released on time. The hurriedly implemented CBC is also causing problems. And the insistence of the regime on prioritizing contracts to build classrooms at a time we know that every secondary has space for Form 1 and 2, and therefore junior secondary can easily be accommodated in secondary schools, which allows even sharing of the teachers. Corruption, outright theft of government funds. In a word, lack of accountability and transparency. And we've seen it firsthand where the Adani contracts were done in a very opaque manner. Ruto and his operatives defending Adani instead of defending Kenyans who were outrightly a majority opposed to the contract. So Adani had the government of India speaking for him and the government of Kenya, and Kenyans had no one but the courts and the many voices that spoke together. Kenyans have been vindicated with Adani's indictment in the US. This is not the only opaqueness. There is opaqueness in contracts awarded for extracting natural resources and especially minerals in this country. We are sinking into debt at a time we are told that we have so many minerals, which if managed well, would get us out of debt. In a nutshell, we are in a total eclipse, as I said on another forum. If Moi era was dark era, this is a total eclipse. There is no light, and we have a duty as Kenyans to stand up, fight for our motherland, and ensure that our constitutional order is restored, human rights are respected, our money is used for the benefit of Kenyans, not the luxury of a few, and that there is good governance and we get quality services in health, in education, and in every other aspect that Article 4 affected, and we get our basic rights. Let me leave that as the opening statement.
Thank you so much, Senior Counsel. As I bring back to my co-host, Redemptor and Abdi on the platform, we are happy also to have Honorable Neto. I see you down there. You can have a mic and come up. You're one of the people who are making this platform to run on. Senior Counsel, I see you're saying that these are opaque. And another thing, I know you're gonna come in again to talk about. We saw the statement or when the president was giving the statement, or William Ruto, last 2 days, and canceled the Adani deal. But still, she and Shah, I don't know the way being called, and is still on, and also the adoption of BCJ. These are things that's so unfortunate. Abdi, back to you. I see Neto came in. Honorable Neto, I don't know. Not sure if you can give your open remark, as and then our key speakers today is Council Honorable Mata Karua, Tina Council, and Kivutha Kibwana, Prof. Abdi or Redemptor.
Redemptor, go ahead. Thank you, Honorable Mother Karua. Welcome. Looking forward to this exciting conversation. Actually, thank you for your comprehensive, thought-provoking submission. You have eloquently captured and intervened crisis of corruption, lack of accountability, the mismanagement of public debt, and their ripple effect on the critical sector like education, health, and economy at large. As you pointed out, corruption remains the root cause draining the resources that could otherwise fund equitable education, sustainable healthcare, job creation, public debt. Meanwhile, it has become a stronghold of our economy. I think we are at a critical juncture. Time has come for a bold leadership and structural reforms that we must push transparency, accountability in use of public funds to enhance institutional framework of our resources also. So having said that, there is a question from our listener also. I'll post back to there's a question I'll post back also to Professor with the questions from Wamboi, that one of our listeners is asking, Ruto has asked for time. What's going to change? He has asked for time to have time to change. Two, is there an exit clause in the Adani contract, or is there a penalty that is there? Thank you. Redemptor, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we will stand guided in this conversation, remembering we're addressing the state of the nation. Governance issue is going to be big, corruption, and then discuss a bit of the Adani deal. But I want to jump straight to the topic of leadership and integrity. And I would want to add in the two main speakers, I would like to add about courage. Now, we had someone who was here a minute ago and asked that when we get these leaders, we tend to shy and we start paying homage to them, and we do not ask them the hard question. We are not looking for a journalistic moment where you get the opportunity to kind of tell them off. But I want to take this opportunity because I have been documenting about our leaders for the longest time. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that today, because we'll have other days, we will bring other leaders. But today we've brought two people who can gel in terms of they're both very senior lawyers, and they also fought for the second liberation. Now, I kind of have a soft spot for women leaders in the element of how they are bashed for that one thing they do, that we forget about their leadership qualities, we forget about their integrity, and we go for the politics, and we go and we take this one moment of election disputes. The older people have a responsibility to share with the younger generation where we've come from as a nation. And if I was to share a moment of the Honorable Mother Karua's life, and the most proud moment for me is right now we are facing dictatorial tendencies. Some will call it outright a dictator. We lived with a dictator. Things got so bad in this country that we hated watching TV. But there was a moment all of us had a glimpse of hope. And that was the moment when the president, Moi, went to Kirinyaga, and Honorable Karua was the MP, and they denied her an opportunity to speak in that gathering. And it's still ingrained in my brain, the lady walking out on the dictator. And her constituents shouted, just to honor her, and the TVs captured that moment. And that moment, those who do not know, is where we get the Iron Lady from, because she dared a dictator. She said, "You cannot come to my turf. and mistreat me, and then I sit here and hear you tell us lies about what you're doing for my people. And she walked away, and that was a moment. And I feel I would want to blame some of these great leaders because they are so humble in a way. They do not blow their own trumpet, and they allow some people to come and just take the one incident and keep drumming it down, drumming it out. Some of us who know who the real liberators know about their integrity, and I'm not here to blow the whistle for these two, but I'm telling you, I've been to Makueni documenting the public participation. And I'll also finish by mentioning someone who's not here because I want to mention them in a positive light. I had the opportunity to attend the book launch of Emeritus Chief Justice Mutunga. And just like the person who came here and raised their hand and wanted to ask a question, they said, you had a moment to change the destiny of this country during the dispute of the elections as a Chief Justice. And he very calmly asked that man, which political party do you belong to? Because he already knew that question was an attack, because this person was holding a grudge because of election disputes. Ladies and gentlemen, our young people are telling us, we know the history, and then we are giving them the skewed history of hatred, the tribal bigotry, the naming and shaming of people just because of the tribe they come from. And so I just had to do that because we need to talk about the leadership integrity we are looking for. And we are in this trouble because we have wash people leading this nation. We have people who cannot even account for the wealth they go to state when they are being appointed. So when we get an opportunity to meet some of these leaders, it will be exciting to tell them off, but let's also give flowers where they are due. So Mother Karua, there's one gentleman who has told me to tell you, you've been the most consistent politician this country has ever had. And it is unfortunate that the games that are played in politics do not have room for women of integrity. So let's get that all out of the way so that if you have an opportunity to ask these people questions, that is not one of the questions we want to entertain. That is, tukikutana mkutano wa ODM na NAC, we will have a shouting match. But let's look at this opportunity as a way to try and get out the best. And they can tell us the lessons they've learned, the games that are played in the political arena, so that when the young people listen to our conversation, they don't leave here always saying, Mother Karua did this and Kibwana did this. Let's look at some of these people that you try to shame are the reason why we have devolution, their track record, when they've been ministers. You can, if you have anything against them in terms of integrity, please share. Asanteni. Oh, there was a mic that was on, so it's kind of, Professor, your mic is still on. So I had to do that, and the opportunity, of course, for Mother to know that this is a safe space. We are not here to attack people who serve this country. The last thing I would like to say is, as we talk about femicide, when we talk about femicide right now, there's a culture that was created by the older women, the human rights defenders, the champions for justice, the founders of organizations like FIDA. And every time there was a case that was affecting the women in this country, you saw these women come together, you saw them rush to the hospital, make statements, go to court, and change the law so that they would protect the women. And Mother is one of those ladies who was involved. Now, the femicide, Martha Karua, I would like you to address the 100 million that has been given, because I feel we had a discussion that feels like an haste. And so the last thing is, I've asked, where are the mothers of this nation? And I'll say this, every time we've seen the young political activist being arrested, she has presented herself not just as a leader, but as a mother of the nation. So I want to do that. And if you have any other questions in regard to the topics of today, the state of the nation, the femicide, the money being allocated for this and that, that is why we are hosting this space. Or I am biased because I respect people who serve this nation, and I always tell them, thank you for your service. Now, mnaweza wabash because I've already given them their flowers. Asanteni.
Thank you so much, Redemptor. I think our focus is state of the nation, and we are here to discuss the issues, and we want to come up with a solution. And that's why we invite these leaders. I want to support what you're saying, that we invite them to get the knowledge that they have and things that have been happening, because they have been in the system for a while, and to know what way forward. How can we get this country in another level? Honorable Neto, I see you on mic. I know you've been here, and some few weeks you've been busy. You can say hi to the audience, and also if you have anything to chime in before the Prof and Senior Counsel coming again.
Thank you very much, Hilary. And it's an honor to be sharing a speaking moment with Professor Kivutha Kibwana and also the Honorable Karua, two respectable Kenyans who are well known to me, and I've engaged with them in our political life. I've engaged with them as politicians and as leaders, but of course as then senior lawyers in my profession. I think, first of all, again, is to apologize. I've been away for the past 2 weeks trying to make sure that Kenya is better. We've been trying to do politics, machinani. That's why I've not been able to be on the calls. But on the topic of the day, I think we have no state, we have no nation. It is very complicated. The state of the nation is brutish. And it is it gores my heart that we can actually be sitting here discussing the nation in this particular manner when people paid by blood and limb to get Kenya to a democratic state. We've seen a presidency who does not respect the constitution, doesn't respect the rule of law. I had a chance to, I didn't watch him speak in the nation, I was busy, but I read his State of the Nation address. And I think it is very annoying that they can actually, that's what he presented to the people. It's very annoying. He was below par. And I think he was just, he was calling out our bluff. One, on corruption, I think he said nothing. He said zero. It was basically empty talk. We know that this government is the most corrupt. And the CS Treasury himself, yesterday or 2 days ago actually has said, confirmed that they still lose 2 billion shillings a day to corruption. In fact, he's appealing to his colleagues that they should actually cut it down to even, they should steal less, they should steal 500 million. So 1.5 billion can then be saved to stop us from going to beg for debt. So that simply shows you that if the presidency was serious, then we would have been doing better. So he gave no milestones in terms of how we want to stem corruption. He gave no milestones. He instead ended up, giving his the usual empty promises, rather lies. The second thing in terms of education, look, Moi University, which is in his backyard, there's sometimes when you're even selfish for your own neighborhood, the mothers, the women who are selling vegetables to those institutions, or the workers, people who used to benefit from Moi University. The university has collapsed because his colleagues, his friends want to steal the land to plant maize. They're wondering, the universities in Kenya producing livestock in the name of members of parliament and other elected leaders. So his colleagues are thinking that instead of letting the university go to waste, make these people livestock early. A university is collapsing right before our eyes. The funding model is not working. Why do you want to fix things that are already working? The funding model was working. Why do you want to fix it? The health insurance fund was working. Why do you want to fix it? So this is I don't know why it's carrying out very expensive experiments. But the third thing with regard to extrajudicial killings, when he blamed, he didn't give us nothing about extrajudicial killings. In fact, I think he said people should reach out to IPOA should be doing its work, or femicide. I don't know what he said. But listen, the only reason why people vote in government is to give them security, life, liberty, and pursue happiness. So if you have a government in place and you cannot pursue happiness, if you do not have liberty, if you do not have life, then that's not a government in place. That's the reason why I say there's no state of the nation. Because the only reason why we wake up in the morning to go to vote is that we are hoping that this person we give the sword is going to be someone who can promise us a life, liberty, and let us pursue happiness. On rule of law, I do not support Gachagua, and of course, he was horrendous as deputy president. But the manner in which he was handed out of office makes us beg a question as to the process and rule of law issues. He should have been removed, but not been removed procedurally. It goes without saying, and everyone knows it, that the president should have apologized to us for having bribed the House of Parliament, for having bribed the Senate, and it's out there that money exchanged hands in the corridors, and that is the reason why the Gazette notice after Gazette notice. You cannot run a country like that. You cannot run the country by the whims of one man in a way that you want to press buttons and you dance the way you want. That's not what the Constitution of Kenya 2010 anticipates. That you can impeach a deputy president, you can impeach the president, but at least there needs to be order in terms of what you do. Youth unemployment, which is something that comes close to my heart. The president said nothing about it. Instead, he said, we know half the Gen Zs were in the streets because the economic issues were tough, youth unemployment was soaring, and so a presidency who is just failing and austere by the young people and commits nothing about youth unemployment. The Hustler Fund, which was introduced and hallowed, turned out to be for theft. People borrowed the Hustler Fund. If at all it exists, I don't even know how it operates. People borrowed it, stole it, and didn't return, and they're no longer proud of it. When they came into office, the only thing that the administration was talking about was how the Hustler Fund was going to transform the nation. That hasn't happened. So with regard to youth unemployment, the president said nothing about value chain addition. He said nothing about how to make sure that most of our young people go to work, because now the education is collapsing. You have many in the informal sector. And so with a youth unemployment, the youth budget is spiraling. How are we going to run the nation? I want to land by saying his pet project right now, which is the housing project, is an ill-conceived project, hopelessly thought through. And I do not understand how the presidency continues to build houses in Embu worth 4 million shillings, and you can get an acre of land and put a better house. You're putting up houses in a rock where you can get an acre of land for 1 million shillings and put in so much money. The problem of copying exams and even copying the student's name is that, I think part of the problems the president wanted to solve with his housing project was, during the economic depression, the U.S. president, looking at how to jumpstart the U.S. economy, put in, a labor-intensive sort of program, which was then able to make money circulate in the economy. But that's not what we do with the housing project. There have been previous experiments in Kenya before with the Road 2000, those of you who are old enough, where you put money directly to places where there's going to be circulation of money in the communities, but also making use of that project that we're building. This housing project is another conduit for stealing. I really think men and women of valor, men and women of character need to team up together and fight for the soul of the nation, because that until then we'll have the state of our nation. Thank you very much, Hilary, for giving a chance.
Thank you, Dr. Neto. Thank you for the powerful submission. Before I give it back to Redemptor, also in regards to the state of the economy, we have one of our panelists, Bonnie Mwangi, who will give us a quick overview, and then we cycle back to our guests. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdi. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Thank you, Bonnie.
I appreciate it. So I want to focus my remarks on what I think is at the center of this issue that we have in our country, which is the growing gap between the average Kenyan and our political class, what I like to call the 2% versus the 98%. And I'll just mention a few things. If you think about our economy, where we are, and all you have to do is start off with the president's speech, right? So he talked about what he believes his government has accomplished in 2023. He talks about improving our shilling by 20%. He talks about inflation falling by 2.7%. He talks about the GDP going by 5.6%. But all of you live in Kenya. If you don't live in Kenya, you visit Kenya often, right? You're able to go to restaurants. You're able to order meals. You know that cost of living is not going down, it's going up. You know that Kenyans are having a hard time affording life. You know that Kenyans are seeking jobs and they're not getting jobs. So, you have a president that's telling you to suspend your own experience, to suspend what you can see with your own eyes, to believe him. And this is part of this government, right? They are telling you to believe things that you know not to be happening. They tell you that they care for you, that they are working to better your lives. But every time you look at what they are doing things to better themselves and their families, as opposed to you. When the president is telling you that the economy grew by 5.6%, he doesn't tell you that his government borrowed an additional 15%. The last 10 years, our country has borrowed almost 10 trillion. Every time we have a budget deficit of about $1 trillion that we add to our balance sheet. So the economy might grow by 5.6%, but we added our whole, so to speak, on the balance sheet by 18%, 15%. So for every 1% that we're getting in GDP growth, we are spending 3 times that. And you don't have to be a genius to know that that's not going to work over the long term. So we wake up in our country spending 60% of our tax revenues on just paying interest alone. And you don't have to be a genius again to think about what that means from a country. If we are losing 60% of our income to interest, think about all the missed opportunities in terms of our ability to provide services to our citizens, in terms of our ability to invest in our infrastructure, in things like healthcare, in things like education. It's damn leadership that leads to a situation like this. And the president has no interest whatsoever to deal with that issue, right? We are talking about growing the economy by 5.6% when you've given up 60% of your income as a country. Tell me what country in the world that's good, that you will look up to, that's doing this, that's behaving this way with people's money. So it's a gap, right? The president tells you that this is what we are doing for you, but you know better. You go to restaurants, you order food, you go to a supermarket, you buy things, and you know that you're having a hard time affording. So we spend a lot of time talking, but we are not really communicating. We are not talking to each other because the president and his government are stuck on giving you the message. Take an example of something like what I would call imposed solutions. The president tells Kenyans that I know what you need. We're going to give you free housing. Not free housing, but we're going to give you housing. We're going to give you healthcare. And yet, when you look at these people and you ask, the senior government officials that are out in the media selling these solutions, you ask them about the specifics, about the economics of their own proposals. They can't speak to them. If you've seen an interview with Sam Gituku questioning the PS for health about the economics and the economics and the general practicality of their proposed solution, they can't speak to that, right? Because we are electing people that have never done anything, they have never led anything, they have absolutely no idea what it means to actually serve people. We put them in positions, we come up with policies, spend a lot of time selling those policies, but when people are questioned about them, they can't speak to them. And so Kenyans ask questions, and then we are told you don't understand. We know what you need. Again, it speaks to the gap, this gap that we have between the citizens and the government. When the government is telling you that we believe that you need housing, and the government is having a hard time giving you your kids basic education. I mean, if I was to call the people that are on this call, where you send your kids to school, I bet you 95% of the people are going to say their kids are going to private school. Why is that? The government already has a responsibility to provide education, but they're not doing it. But now they're moving into telling you that they're going to give you housing. And they wouldn't even do what they're supposed to do right now to the best of their abilities, but they're telling you that they're going to do other things. Mention the last thing. We see a government that's spending a lot of time talking to Kenyans, talking down to Kenyans, telling you that they are dealing with corruption. We've talked about corruption in this country for 40 years, and yet nothing happens. The president tells you that we're going to deal with corruption. Yet, at the same time he's doing this, he's electing and embracing thieves into his own government. You see me talk about people like Evans Kidero, who plundered billions from the citizens of Nairobi. Guess what? Within the last week, he was appointed to another position in government to head a national corporation. Okay, how is that possible? Tell me a country where the president embraces a known thief, someone who stole billions from citizens. The individual that we're talking about has court cases to this day, but the president appoints him to lead a national corporation. The president appoints people like Governor Anok, someone who stole billions from the people of Turkana. Think about that. Turkana County has a poverty rate of 80%. 80% of the people in that county cannot afford food. 20% literacy rate. That individual steals billions from that county and it gets promoted to a position in State House. He works for you and I. He has a car. He has health insurance. He has other benefits. He has security, courtesy of you and I. So he stole from his citizens, some of the most vulnerable Kenyans, and then he gets appointed to a State House position. So Kenyans can see this, right? When the president tells you that he's fighting corruption, and then at the same time he's appointing thieves into office, we can see this. We are not dumb people, but we are supposed to suspend our own experiences and what we can see with our eyes, and take what the government is saying as gospel. But we know better. We know better. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie, for your submission. And just a quick question from our followers. They're asking actually, with Kenya, I'll leave you to reflect on that question. Meanwhile, we'll cycle back to you. They're asking, with Kenya debt to GDP ratio spiraling out of control, what alternative approaches will you recommend to stabilize the economy and provide a relief to struggling Kenyans? And the other question was, how can,
Can I answer that?
and the other question is, how can Kenya attract foreign investment without compromising its sovereignty, as seen in the Adani deal cancel agreements? Anyway, I'll leave you to reflect, or you want to go now?
No, I just wanna react to that quickly. Economics is not as difficult as people make it sound to be. If I polled, the people that are on this call, and I told you that we woke up and we find out that we are spending 60% of our tax revenue on debt. And I said, okay, what do we do as Kenyans, right? What do we do in this situation? We are spending 60% of our tax revenue to pay interest alone. I bet you 95% of you will come up with top 3 solutions. How did we get to this position, right? Well, we have a budget of about 4 trillion. We raised 3 trillion every year, so we have a whole of $1 trillion. Okay, so can we look at where we can cut costs? Our political system. Our politicians are the second highest politicians in the world when you consider the size of our GDP. That means they make more money relative to our GDP than politicians in the US, than Canada, than Germany, than Japan, than Australia. Why is that? Why are we paying our politicians this much money when we are a poor country? So 95% of you will agree that we need to cut costs there. Okay, so we talk about the fact that we lose 800 billion to corruption every year. Our gap is about $1 trillion. I talked about our budget being about 4 trillion and the fact that we raise about 3 trillion. So we have a whole of about $1 trillion. If we just address corruption, even if you cut it by 60 or 70%, you're going to have made a significant progress towards addressing that issue. But when was the last time you had the president saying that you're going to actually fix it? You can't talk about corruption when you're appointing people like Kidero and Nanok and all these other thieves into office. It doesn't mean anything. There's nothing that we can do when we have, I can talk to people, we love to talk about our constitution and the fact that it's progressive. It doesn't mean a damn thing when the president is appointing thieves into office. How are we supposed to prosecute thieves of public resources when they're the ones that are in these positions? So Kenyans will know that we need to cut costs, and part of what we have to look at is what we pay our politicians. We have a government that is not sustainable, too many politicians, where we don't need to have 47 counties, frankly. We don't need to have as many MCAs as we do right now. So we need to look at that and say, okay, so we need to cut down the numbers, we need to cut down the salaries. And lastly, we spend a lot of time, or you spend a lot of time on my TL, you see my analysis showing the level of wastage where we are spending so much money on these trips abroad for quote unquote benchmarking, quote unquote effective leadership. It's all nonsense. We can save a lot of money by reducing all this travel, all this wastage. If people, again, if we want to solve this issue, we start off by electing the right people that have a different mindset, that know that being in a public position is for you to serve people. It's not for you to charge for these trips abroad. It's not for you to go there and say, okay, well, how can I make some extra money? I'm gonna get on a trip to go to Dubai to learn about poverty alleviation, when you can look outside the window and you can see poverty. I mean, these things are not rocket science. So let's think about who we are electing to these positions, because if we think about that, it is not difficult to actually solve this problem. They're not as difficult, complicated as our politicians want you to believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie, for your submission. Thank you addressing the state of the economy. Now we'll cycle back to Professor and then to Honorable Mother Karua. Professor, please go ahead. Thank you.
I think there is the question, and before maybe even going to the femicide question, which has also been directly addressed to Martha by Redemptor, just to say that only from this conversation, let alone conversations that we have been having, first of all, there is absolute knowledge about what is the problem. And I think maybe we need to begin to focus more on the solutions rather than, every time kind of talking more and more about what the problems are, unless new problems are emerging. But I kind of feel that we are getting to the place where the issues are kind of settling or settled. And I hope that in a lot of the conversations that we have, that is probably the direction we will take. Two, even in terms of the knowledge of what are the issues and how they can be sorted out, as has been demonstrated, even in this conversation, by all these eloquent people, and the last one being Bonnie, the people know what should be done. And I think all of us here and in many other spaces are leaders. So it's not like Martha, it's not like or Kia, it's not like myself or whoever. There is leadership here, to drive a proper government, and so I think now the focus really should be how do we create that alternative group that is able to go to Kenyans and get Kenyans to say, yes, we have been waiting, for you. And let me, I will not stay too long in terms of what the president said, because I think many people have said that, this is just a speech to mollify, Kenyans, to not really to tell them a proper assessment of the state of the nation. But I think it's instructive that he talked about citizens are ahead of leadership, and they want the listening leadership. And all the questions asked by the people must be answered. And even said there are discussions about whether leaders understand the pain, hardship, and struggles endured by countless citizens every day as they strive to make ends meet, and whether the government is doing anything about it. So you can see it's like more or less laughing at the people saying, this is what you're saying. But then the answer is, you can go to hell. In terms of what answers are provided as, this conversation has kind of demonstrated. Now, I want to talk about like this femicide. Sometimes you wonder, how come there are abductions? How come there are shootings of young people? How come there is the quarry, the body is deposited at quarry? How come afterwards there is this unexplainable upsurge of femicide? So that it looks like after one thing happens, something else happens, so that we can talk about it. You don't quite understand how it is emerging, because it is like an upsurge. So we have to be careful also that some of these things are not also being orchestrated, so that there is diversion, by the state. And it's true that there is, significant mental health. That's a huge thing, particularly among even young people. A lot of them, into the very cheap mukuka, cheap drugs, the alcohol, chrome, some other thing called county, and of course the system knows that these drinks are hurting the young people, are actually disappearing them from social life and from even political life. So it's also intentional, because a system normally would say that these drinks are not good and they should not be allowed to be exposed to young people. But having said about the femicide, it is an issue that must be addressed. And there were those groups like FIDA, there were groups that, were doing that work and are doing this work. But some of this 100 million, we have to be careful whether it is being deployed to the 16 days of activism, so that government people go all over the counties, trying now to do something about femicide. So that again, instead of the money going to groups and through, proper, through parliament or whatever it is, in a proper way, it is not actually used for government to endear itself, to try to endear itself to appear to be solving problems, using it to go to the counties. That is something that we need to look at. And there was an earlier question asked about the religious sector, that the religious sector appears to have kind of waken up. And of course, the Gen Zs were very harsh, rightly so, to the religious sector because it had abated the coming into power, of this system. And I think we have to be careful so that when we have allies or their allies who have begun to say that they don't like what has been happening, if you are very hard on them again, you're chasing them away from the support of progressive forces, and because allies are important. The Gen Zs, the civil society, the faith people, eventually the business class. You have to, the more you get people on your side, the more you weaken a system that is predatory. And so people also have to be very, very, very strategic in terms of how do you woo people to your side. And I think maybe there are people here on this call who are political scientists, but it is clear that the president is not, maybe sleeping a lot of the time. He's strategizing because if you get, for example, Raila on your side, if you have all of parliament on your side, and of course he was saying that like the gender rule, the 2/3 has not been achieved, but he has all the parliament on his side, and even the court said you can dissolve parliament. The chief justice wrote to the president, you can dissolve a parliament if they don't, pass this legislation. So why doesn't he do that? And why doesn't he get all these people who do what he tells them to do the necessary? So you can see it's again taking back issues to like the IPOA, what was stated, the IPOA by NATO, and so on, and he knows that IPOA has been, if I can use this word, it has been kind of castrated. So that again is quote strategy. But now we have been told that the principal secretaries have not been working. So now it's necessary to make new ones. We have been told now there must be a more focused performance contract and all that. So you can see those are strategies that are being used, whether it is getting political people, parliament, whether it is getting, the new permanent secretaries and so on, because it appears like initially he brought on board people who supported him to kind of say, you did a good job, you supported me. And now he's saying, okay, it looks like things are not working. Let's get the new breed so that we can get 2027. So one asks, is what is happening because of incompetence? Or is it a strategy to impoverish the people so that during 2027 elections, you can buy them easily? So that 2026, 2027 are handouts years where you say hustler, you can get it without even having to pay it. And there's a lot of, money going everywhere, bribing leaders, the kind of weak leaders, bribing the citizens and all that kind of stuff, especially rural folk. So we have to ask ourselves, and this is not yet time for like way forward, but we have to ask ourselves, the corruption thing, because if we deal with that, and Bonnie, talk to that, if we deal with this tribalism, this culture of, people complain, and then at the end, they're all put under the yoke of tribalism. Even educated people, even intellectuals, even whoever, we go back to the tribal thing. Just like in America, where I think there is some eminent professor from Kennedy School of Government who said America has gone back to bad politics, to really something very, 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 a culture of doing things the bad way. We have been doing that in Kenya and in a lot of the African countries where, we complain and then finally we still support what hurts us, and we get into the hands-out, and we get into the state using IEBC or the electoral body, using instruments of the state and resources to give itself power. We have talked a lot about civic education. There isn't proper mechanism for making sure that in the 1,450 wards, it is really happening. But maybe finally, to talk about I think the question which was asked about the church, I think I've answered that, and the faith general, not just the church, that when they say that this is not right, like happened in the 90s, and even happened during Mau Mau, and so on, then one must not continue criticizing them when they are saying that now we can see that this is not working. There should be support so that the more you get allies, you secure them. You don't tell them, you have done so many things in the past, we don't trust you. Of course, if they go back, then they are called out, because if they do now things that are counter the new move, then they are told, no, we want you to stay firm. The courage that Redemptor was talking about. But I think as maybe towards the end of this, and I have a class tomorrow, so I have also to prepare for my class. But I think we really need to say what is the way forward and be firm, and because unless we can show to Kenyans that there is an alternative, then Kenyans will say, okay, maybe these people will change. Maybe they are calling more people, into this broad-based stuff, and maybe it will be better. And because that has been the history of our 60 plus years of independence. And I learned by saying, you cannot underestimate the president and these guys who are coming together, because when they feel that there are people who are planning seriously to get them out, then they come together, and what I call the old canoe, keeps on coming together, and we think they are different, and then they come together, they are not different. So we really have to, be very focused in terms of what needs to be done, and I learned.
Redemptor, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor. There are so many things. We are going through so many things. Even when we have conversations, we don't know which one to tackle first. Back to you, Honorable Martha. Governance, corruption, and Adani, and the specific one, because you're lawyers. Is there a way of undoing some of these things? Like if these deals are made and we take our country back in terms of where we are. So address the corruption, and then maybe the economy, and then the checks and balance, or whatever you had prepared for us. But I would like that to guide our conversation. Asante.
Okay, do we have time? I am seeing 3 hands. Do we have time that you can take the 3 hands and then I come in?
Okay, that's fine. I needed your permission to do that. So Wanjiro, I think Wanjiro has a question for you, and then we can have Farah.
Wanjiro dropped. I think
Wanjiro.
we can go on, and then Kenya for Kenyans.
Yes, Farah.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, Hillary, the Redemptor, Abdi, thank you for the consistency. I totally agree with what Professor Kivutha has said, because we cannot keep on discussing problems. Hatuwezi tukakaa, we will waste our time and our opportunity and our efforts just discussing the issues. One thing I believe in is, just as all of these things are happening concurrently, we must also have the space and the capacity to let all of this coexist within ourselves, and at the same time find solutions. I've been lucky enough to be one of the few people who got Martha Karua's book early, and on the preface, the last paragraph, she starts with a line that says, every generation stands on the shoulders of the previous generation. And this is something I totally identify with, and I believe that in our African culture, every generation is supposed to empower the next generation to be better than them, and basically move humanity forward. And with this, we have a lot of problems as a country, but amongst ourselves, we have more than solutions. We actually have solutions that can take Kenya much further ahead than where we are today, or where some of us envision this country might have been in the next couple of years. But this requires our collective efforts together. Si mambo ya wewe unataka kitu fulani or somebody else wants something else specifically. The reality is Kenya will not change until we as a people change, because hakuna vile utaitisha, you will not demand good leadership if you're not a good citizen yourself. So my question to Martha and Kivutha and everybody else here as well is, we understand the scopes of our problems, and the only way we can come up with a solution, in my opinion, is analyzing each department and coming up with solutions that are tailor-made for this country and this economy, and understanding them for ourselves, whereby we would really require the help of people like Martha and Kivutha in forming a national think tank, a people's think tank that comes up with solutions for the people, and nobody's going to pay you. And we can guarantee you that all we want is your loyalty and love for this nation, because reading Martha's book, Mwanjogu's influence is enough for her to love this country. And to sum it up, yani kuileta tu ikuwe rahisi, would you, the older generation, be willing to come up, to sit down, create a think tank, especially you people who have been influential and have been people of integrity, come up with a think tank that will come up with specific solutions that are tailor-made for this country, regardless of whether you stand to benefit or not? Thank you.
Thank you, Farah. Always a pleasure that you embrace the intergenerational Gen Zote. Kenya for all.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Lynette Kieti, and I'm based in the US. I wanted to just start very briefly to talk about the state of the nation, because that's the topic. And the state of the nation, in my mind, should be determined by the citizens. And given that, it is very clear that the state of the nation is bleak and the state of the nation is in shambles. And so we really need to think about, just like some speakers before me have said, let's not focus too much on what has been, and maybe spend as much time on what we can do to move ourselves forward and out of this state. And I feel that we need to focus about how do we remove the current leadership, whether it's now or it's during the elections. How do we, if it's not now and it's during the elections, what can we do to help Kenyans survive until that time? And what can we do to replace the current leadership? And of course, this is a very important question, and it's pertinent at this moment, because I foresee a situation where we can all see that it's sort of a train wreck, and we don't do enough now, that in the end we run out of time and we end up with the same leadership again. So we have to, as the speaker before me mentioned, we have to focus on many things. And also, as Professor said, we have to have specific targets and specific people following different avenues and having deliverables and making sure that we get this, we start all the processes to get this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we bring Mother Redemptor, can we give Dr. Milton 2 minutes also to wrap up his submission? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abdi. Thank you, Redemptor. And I want to salute Professor Kibwana's sentiments and Honorable Martha Karua for what she has said. I think I'm on the same page with the Professor, that we already know what the issues are. We already know what's not working. We now need to go into the practical steps that we need to take to make sure that this leadership that is doing everything against the will of the Kenyan people um, is taken out, and we can have responsible leaders taking over, and we can be able to ventilate on those areas as we go along. So my practical steps are, I'm going to address myself to two broad areas, and give my proposals in terms of what I think can be able to get us onto the next step and across the line. And of course, I say so with a lot of humility, that this script has already been written. All we need to do is pick it up from the yesteryears, and Martha and Prof have already been through this, and they could be able to advise and share how we can modify the ideas that we have, to modify the script that worked in the 90s and 80s, so that we are able to achieve a template that works for the present times. So, number one, on the issue of corruption and fidelity to the rule of law, I think my way of looking at it is that we need a way forward where we can establish pressure groups which can initiate course of action in courts. And here we can have multiple suits on different issues. Again, different caucuses can be able to bring these courses of action, so that one, for example, we uh, put pressure and demand that all government deals be made public. This is critical, starting with the Adani one as a starting as the first step. We must be able to demand that everything that this government has got its hands on be made public, because those are public documents. There is no reason that Kenyans cannot have access to them, or government will hold on to them. So the different ministries and state agencies that have gone into contract or into any arrangement with entities that are either local or foreign, we need to know what this government is signing the country into, and we can do so through multiple suits, different entities going to court and saying, hey, this is what we need, so that we have those documents, court orders that are very specific. Make these documents public. Number two, we need to have the courts being moved in such a way that they can stay execution, or they can stay certain policy decisions by this government, by this administration, that are counter the aspirations of the Kenyan people. Where there is no public participation, we already have a template that those decisions cannot be implemented. Look, because this government has demonstrated that it will do things and hope that nobody is seeing, and those things will be used against the Kenyan people. We must be able to stop that. We need to be able to have a review and an audit of every single decision that has been taken by any of the government entities, and calling for greater accountability on that. We can also go ahead and demand for a publication of the public debt portfolio. This has been said so many times. We keep told how government is paying our debt, or our debt has matured and we are paying this disbursement and that. Nobody knows what that money was used for, how that money was used. We keep hearing of how money never came to the consolidated fund. But every other day, we are being told how we are supposed to be paying, how we are paying interest. What are we paying interest on? How much money came into Kenya? Where was that money deployed? And it is in our constitution that you cannot borrow for recurrent expenditure. So if money was borrowed for development, which specific projects was that money used? That is the detail of how the public debt portfolio needs to be published. And we could have the courts, and we could even, in my view, seek audience at the International Court of Justice, or there are international bodies where Kenyans can seek audience and get orders, where the country and whoever we owe the money can be brought to book in a way that Kenyans are aware of how much they are paying, how much came in, and where it went to. And if there is corruption involved, we are able to say we are not pay, can't pay, won't pay if there is no value for our money. The other thing I want to address myself to as the last issue is the issue of abductions and femicide. Now, it is confirmed that the terror squad that is responsible for abductions and even the femicides that are happening is comprising fellows that are not even citizens. We have people from as far as DRC who are responsible for this. What is our course of action? First, we need to get a list of and engage with all these families. Once we have the list, this inventory will help us get the families to sue IPOA, to sue the IG for failure to protect their family members. And we have individual officers who have been identified already. Can we have a course of action against these individuals so that we can have them come out and say they were taking instructions and acting um, on instructions from certain people. That way, we are raising the accountability bar and making it impossible for anybody being used or being given illegal orders from acting on those orders or instructions. Now, the last point I am going to make about this is citizens, we need to engage our rural folks. And this is where, again, I would call upon all of us. There is vernacular media. We cannot trust the mainstream media as it were because of the possibility of being compromised. But do we have alternatives? Yes, we have alternative media outlets. We have alternative media materials that we can produce to reach out to the people. Grassroots mobilizations modeled on the Nyumba Kumi initiative, like I said the last time I addressed this space. We have an opportunity to use the Nyumba Kumi model to be able to mobilize people at the village level. We need to identify those people and start moving. I'm glad that Martha is here. I'm glad that Prof is here. We can be able to use the NARC Kenya and the political party structures that exist to be able to reach down to the people and have this message getting down there. Prof, your success as governor of Makueni County is something that we need to borrow from so that we begin creating this kind of grassroots penetration so that the people who are going to listen to these masqueraders, these dealers addressing them from top of the vehicles, who are going down to the villages and trying to dish out money that is stolen from Kenyans, pretending to care for them. That is where we need to reach so that the people can begin to ask the hard questions. And lastly, I know IEBC is not in place here. And probably, I dare say that William Ruto has no intention of having the IEBC back because he probably doesn't want to see any by election happening. He doesn't want to see any electoral processes being undertaken because he knows that this will be a referendum against his failed leadership. So, can we have our people mobilized to start recalling of MPs initiatives going on and being undertaken by pressure groups and different non-state actors so that we start signature collections, we start filing of those petitions in the High Court so that MPs will not sit pretty. I do believe that if these initiatives are going on, then we can have a more engaged citizenry and we can rebuild to another June 25th in the near future or even before the end of the year if we are able to take those initiatives and if we are able to continue consistently being on these spaces and speaking out. And like I have said, Kurunzi News is available to continue with the engagements. Pressure Point is always available. We can continue to do so. If there is material that needs to be produced and put out there, Kuruzi News is available. We will have those stories and those in that content that the mainstream media is being apathetic to, we can publish it on Kurunzi News so that the people get to know. We can be able to continue engaging by way of interviews in even where those other mainstream media entities are not able to do it. And lastly, in conclusion, do we have people who have frequencies that they are not using? Can we come together and caucus and begin to sustain that pressure? Create that alternative media outlets that will help get the word out there using vernacular, using whatever means that is legal to be able to do this. And in conclusion, I know I stand to be accused of propagating terrorist narratives, but that is not the point. We need to adopt the terrorist mentality in terms of military precision with which they execute their plans so that we can run William Ruto and these dealers and cabal out of town. Any extra day that they continue being in office is a disservice to our people, and our people continue dying because this leadership has no interest in serving the Kenyans. It has only care for how much they will loot, how much they will make, and how much they will amass for themselves illegally. We can deploy the terrorist mentality or mindset in terms.
We lost Dr. Milton. Dr.
No,
Milton, you need to land.
yeah, I'm landing. I'm landing. I'm just saying we need to mobilize. We need to start hitting the ground running so that we can get our people emancipated. As it is right now, it is getting worse by the day. And an extra day without action is a disservice to our people who are in slavery and bondage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Milton. Thank you very much, Honorable Mother, for your patience. And now I give you the mic and a few minutes to make your submissions. Asante.
Okay, I'll try to be very fast. And I want to acknowledge that we have worked previously very well with Dr. Neto. He's a promising younger leader, if he can allow me to call him that, because I'm a senior citizen. And also we work and still work with Professor. And I want to let you all know that according to Article 132 of the Constitution, the State of Nation address should come immediately at the end of each year. So we ourselves held the State of Nation address on the 17th of September, because the Ruto year ended on, second year ended on 13th. And we included many issues. We are going to repost it afresh on our timelines for you to see how we responded to those issues. There is a great opportunity for action following the Gen Z protests. The bar of accountability was raised high because for the first time, they interrogated the issue of Harambes. If you remember, Occupy churches, which frightened churches to cancel fundraisers, and which seems now to be forgotten by the regime. And you have seen Ruto moving around, dishing out money, more money than he would earn in 5 years in just a few Harambes. And we thank the Catholic Church for leading the way in rejecting the money. Because when we talk of accountability and transparency and how our money is being abused, Harambes are actually the bedrock of corruption. That is what makes leaders require so much money to service their politics. And those who have access to being able to manipulate, steal, or award themselves in spite of conflict of interest tenders in order to get extra money, and also money for campaign and the handouts that are given. All these are part of the corruption. And therefore, we have a great opportunity to carry this conversation forward. And I'm imagining, what if we had these spaces in 47 counties? We all belong to counties. It's like having rallies without mobilizing with much money to have those spaces and this conversation. And this answers the question of civic education. Civic education, I would call it civic engagement. None of us has a monopoly of wisdom. When we come together and share ideas, we are enlightening ourselves, we are affirming ourselves. It is civic engagement that is bound to transform this country. I would like to say that a constitution is as good as the implementers. Our constitution is good. Are those of us who are implementers as good? Are the courts helping us to live our dream? There I'll answer yes and no, because in the magistrates' courts, we have seen a judge or two rejecting trumped-up charges. You remember the Morara charges? We have seen the High Court, and especially the Judicial Review Court, give very good judgments. We have seen other courts come up with very good judgments and others with very repressive judgments. We've also seen sparks of light from the Court of Appeal, and we've seen darkness in the Supreme Court. I think we need to bring the conversation and spotlight, give flowers for the good judgment, and discuss, and with respect, take exception and differ with the bad judgments, because these are the people who are pulling us down. Every professional given an opportunity to serve Kenya must serve Kenya in the way that Kenya should be served. So we must encourage one another. And some of this encouragement is that all these officers come from us, the community. We should be able to bring pressure on them wherever we meet. Anybody implementing any part of the Constitution, whether as a security agent, a judicial officer, or a person seated in the offices, whether a passport office or IEBC, holds their office courtesy of Kenyans, because the sovereignty belongs to the people. Whatever power you have is donated by the people. There appears to be ignorance or refusal to acknowledge this fact, that whatever decision you make must be in the best interests of the people. That is where our institutions and institutions are run by you and me are letting us down. That is why we are having femicide unabated, enforcement, investigations. The entire criminal justice system is weak. Not because the law is not good enough, but we refuse to do the right thing. And I want to agree with Professor Kibwana that I suspect some of the femicide is by the law enforcement agencies. You can't tell me that any single Kenyan can decapitate so many females and dump them in quarry without anybody noticing. The speed at which they tried to offload this to a person whom they put in custody and later released was suspect. So yes, we have a breakdown of law and order in the country, and the femicides are high, but I think they are also increased by illegal activities of sections of the law enforcement agencies. Until someone explains quarry and why today that place has not been drained so that we see how many other bodies are there, or whether all bodies were fished out, that remains suspect. We need not just money, and this is not so much about money. It is much more about commitment and enforcement. And if we were interested, if the administration was interested in reducing femicide, beyond enforcement, there will be a campaign, a very serious media campaign. And because the state is not the best in engaging the people, they would partner with civil society organizations, including the church. where we discuss this issue and how to solve it, where we advise young women and all women of all ages and anybody in distress, male or female, what to do, and as a nation, how we can look out for each other to bring this wanton of taking away of lives away. And I want to acknowledge it's the 16 days of activism. And I know that women's organizations, human rights organizations are all together bringing awareness and holding forums during these 16 days of activism. Very quickly, it is good that we understand that the DNA of William Ruto is lies, more lies. It is also corruption, and it is abetting extrajudicial killings, if not planning them. And therefore, there is no way things are going to change. The elephant in the room is a deficit of trust, a deficit of good leadership. Not because Kenyans do not have good people who can lead, but because collectively, a critical number of citizens have chosen to give bad people positions of leadership. Ruto did not lie who he was. He might have said the things he will do, but there is one thing he never said throughout that campaign. And one time, David D reminded us in a tweet, they never promised to fight corruption. So how on earth did we expect that he would fulfill the promises he was giving without fighting corruption and impunity? Therefore, we say we were deceived, but we were deceived with our eyes open. So we must engage each other in our homes, in forums like this, and agree to refer back to our manual, which is the Constitution, on qualities of a good leader, on Chapter 6, on leadership and integrity, and encouraging one another that we elect leaders of integrity from the MCA right up all the 6 seats to the presidency. We also have to agree that we all grow our dreams. It is not wrong to be ambitious. So I should be led to grow myself and run. Kalonzo should be led to grow his dream and run. Omtata should grow his dream and run. And anybody else who wants to run. But we must all agree that indeed, if what we want is to bring good leadership in Kenya, that Kenya is bigger than any one of us. And that those who want to bring good leadership will at some stage converge and get a method of selecting the person who is likely to be able to dethrone this wicked regime, be the one to carry the flag. If Kenya is greater than me, then I should be happy to have it move on, even if I do not get the trophy of that position of leadership I want. But we must embrace competition and a good way of settling who becomes the flag bearer. Are we coming together as leaders to provide leadership? Yes, we are trying that in various spaces. All the initiatives you see are good, but eventually we should be able to link up. All the progressive forces should link up to be able to find common ground. Can we do a think tank? Yes, it is possible. And this is something people should volunteer to do so that there is information and research on specific issues. And there are very many ways we can do this. So there are two projects I see to save Kenya. One project is the short-term immediate measures. Immediate measures is continue pushing this rogue regime to adopt transparency, to be accountable, and yes, we continue demanding for information. Dr. Milton, we continue doing that. There are very many people in court, even on Adani. Our courts do not always grant us access to information. I have been penalized for asking for information from JSC, and when the court refused to give a stay, I had recently had to pay costs. But this should not deter us, because together we can be able to do it. The next project is the project of running Ruto and his rogue regime out of town. And that is the one that will need, all those projects need research, need a lot of information, and the two feed on each other. And if you ask what we can do right now is to push the regime to stop non-priority spending and redirect that money to people's needs. And there are so many areas of this, but I'll only mention one because people know many. Foreign travel, if you imagine that it's not only Ruto who travels, and Ruto alone by half the year had used, but the last year he had used over 18 billion on travel. If you imagine that it's not just him, it's also all the senior officers in all the ministries, all his members of cabinet, the 47 county assemblies, the 47 governors, the more than 470 CECs in the 47 counties, National Assembly, Senate. If you think of that, the amount of for travel is mind-boggling. Redirected, it can be enough for so many things. It can fund education, it can fund health, it can do many other things, and this is just one area. So we must continue, never tire, to ask this regime to stop wasting our money. We should not tire to fight on fighting for the rule of law, for stopping the abductions, both internally and externally. And this one of Bessie has exposed them a lot. So there are many things we can do, and we will not be able to mention all of them here. I just want to agree that we have a job to do, and it is not easy, but it is doable. And we should remember that Sudan of al-Bashir was virtually a police state, a very strong army, long years of service of Bashir, but he ended up in a prison. The same with Egypt. After Tahrir Square, Mubarak, whoever was the president then ended up in prison. China had Tiananmen Square, and that is a closed regime, but there was still a revolution. This is not impossible. We can do it, and really we must do it to save us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Mother. One of the things we would ask you to do probably before you leave is just tell us a bit about your book and the way forward. I would want Bonnie to ask a question, and kindly make your presentations very short. We see all those hands. So Bonnie, you go first.
Thank you. Actually, what I wanted to do is just make some quick remarks. I want to be very brief. I believe that the solution to our problems today are not new laws. We don't need new institutions. We don't need new think tanks. I understand this is a little bit of a contrarian view, but I believe that we don't need to go and invent anything new. Everybody knows that in our country that corruption is illegal, right? Everybody knows that. The penalties for corruption under the law are serious, right? It's not the death penalty, but there are serious consequences. But our constitution and our laws mean absolutely nothing if we are going to elect thieves into office. The constitution and the laws do not enforce themselves. We love to talk about our constitution, how beautiful it is, how progressive it is. But when we look at what's happening today in 2024, it's worse than we ever had, right? What's happening right in our country, in my view, is worse than what was happening in the last days of Moy, right? People are getting picked up arbitrarily on the streets for nothing other than, criticizing their own government or trying to hold the government accountable. You're seeing people, for example, the official or, the leader from Uganda getting picked up in a way that is absolutely shameful. You're seeing corruption everywhere. I mean, we've always had corruption in this country. The difference between the past leaders and their corruption and what's happening now is that the people that are in power right now, they are stealing from you and they're spitting on your face. And then they meet you on X and give you an update, right? They show you their cars, they show you their mansion, they show you their kids graduating from Bremen and all these other fancy schools. So they're not afraid to spit in your face. That's the difference. And so the solution to these issues are not going and inventing new laws or new structures to try and hold them accountable. It's us. We have to look in us and ask ourselves, what have we done to contribute to this? And we need to own up to that. These people that are doing this to you and I, they don't get into office through overthrowing other governments. We put them into those offices. So we have to look at us and say, what have we done? How have we contributed to this mess, and how can we fix it? And so, that's where we need to focus all our efforts on. If we just make sure that we elect the right people, we're going to solve our problems. There's no amount of laws or think tanks or institutions that you can come up with or money that you can dedicate to this issue of corruption that's ever going to overcome the damage that we do to ourselves when we elect thieves into office. I mean, if you elect someone like Governor Sonko, who tells you that he was a thief in Mombasa, who did not complete his jail sentence, he's a known thief, but he tells you that he's reformed, and then you put him into power to lead a county that has a budget of 40 billion. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? We elect a president who has criminal cases. We elect his deputy who has criminal cases. We close our eyes to that, and they get into office, and within a year, they are stealing like there's no tomorrow. You should not be surprised by this, guys. We should not be surprised by this. We need to look in ourselves and ask ourselves, why is it that we keep electing thieves? Why are we doing this to ourselves? If we focus on
Go ahead, Bonnie Land. Thank you.
Yeah, I keep getting muted. I'm not sure. So the point is this: we don't need, in my view, we don't need new institutions. We don't need new laws. We need to be accountable as citizens. Demand better of ourselves. Demand better of ourselves. Do not vote for criminals. Vote for people who have known for integrity, people who have not stolen from you, and people who know what they're doing. That's 90% of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Bono. Before we head to our speakers so that they can also go, I will give Wanjiru a minute, and then we can divulge into the book Redemptor was talking. Over to you, Wanjiru.
Thank you, Abdi. Just want to address my question to Senior Counsel Mother Karua. And before I ask a question, I just want to give her flowers for all the work she's done and all the mentoring and inspiration she's been for over the years. I personally has been inspired a lot by her ever since I first set my eyes on her in the Nakuru Law Courts. That was a long time ago. Anyway, my question is about healthcare and the state of healthcare. And my question is, with the state of the judiciary as it is now, what recourse do citizens have when they do not get, adequate health care? Now, we watched a child who died in Longisa Hospital in Bomet due to negligence, and the parents had been asked to pay 500 shillings, which they could not afford. Also, people are paying into the SHIF and still going into hospitals and not getting medical care. So what recourse do citizens have? Can citizens sue county governments, and can they sue the national government for lack of healthcare? Because people are dying. So if you take your family to the hospital and they die because of negligence or because of lack of medical attention due to the failure of shift, do citizens have any recourse to this? Thank you.
Thank you, Wanjiru. Before I hand over to Redemptor, Redemptor also was talking about the book, Honorable Mother Karua, Your Mema, Against the Tide. So there is a question for you from our listeners that I know the book takes us through a journey from a humble beginning to becoming a national figure. The question for you was, why did you write the book? Why did you decide to write it now? What do you hope to achieve with the release of this book? And I know the highlights about resilience in the face of challenges, lessons from experiences. What lessons or experiences would you like to pass to Kenyan, particularly on the ask in fighting corruption, impunity, and promoting good governance? And then the other question was, you have been at the forefront of transformative leadership. How does your book address the struggle and success of fighting for justice in a system that is plagued by corruption? Final question from our listeners again is, where can we access a copy of your book? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll first answer Wanjiru on healthcare. And even with the state of the judiciary, which I always compare to a leaking roof, that when it's raining and your roof is leaking, you do not carry your bed to go and sleep in the rain. You push your bed in the corner where it is not leaking or it's leaking less. So even though we have challenges within the judiciary, we have also presiding officers who make quite bold and great judgments. And I think we've all seen sparks of light coming from the judiciary, especially from the High Court. And a few sparks from the magistrates, a few sparks from the Court of Appeal. So even though we have those challenges, let us keep suing. Yes, you can sue. Sue both the national and the county government, because the national is the one that has imposed the chief SHA. The county government is the one managing the local hospitals. Nobody should have to lose their life or to suffer because they have been denied access to health. Even the hospital itself ought to be sued, because this is against the Constitution. Let's keep trying. Even a group suit. As Wanjiru spoke, I was thinking that there could also be a representative suit, citing a few of the examples that are available, and they are not few, because if they were collected, there would be quite many, and therefore fighting for Kenyans. And we have institutions that can do this. During my younger days, I did a lot of pro bono litigation to push the government of Moi and Kanu to do things. I no longer practice, but there are many in general. I go to court, but I no longer have an office for practice. But there are many, many people and institutions doing this, and we can all team up together. About my book, it is not that I sat and chose to write at this time. I've been writing this book for the last 9 years. I thought it would be released last year, but I wasn't able to finalize. I thought it would be released on my birthday in September. We were not able to finalize. Finally, I have finished. We share our stories. One shares a story so that people know you from your own perspective, not from the media, and that you get a comprehensive view of me, not just what the media shows you, which will be select episodes of me at work, because it's not as though they are following me 24/7. So this is a holistic, from my point of view, a holistic view of who I am, where I'm coming from, my journey, the what's and all. Therefore, there are things you will pick, there are mistakes you can avoid. It's just sharing, and we grow by hearing one another. That's what we are doing in this forum. It doesn't mean that because I'm named speaker, what we say is the thing. We are speaking to one another. So by releasing a book, I'm speaking to those who will read. They may share or may not share my views. There may be lessons to learn. There are people I will affirm because they'll have something similar with me, and I'll also have introduced myself to you. It is a memoir, and I have promised to write another book about the 2022 elections because I did not include that. The book started a long time, and I thought if I start writing about 2022, it would have taken me even longer. So I decided to finish it as it was without going to 2022, which I'll embark on soon. The book is available at Nuria Bookshop. If you look at my X page, you will see how you can do a direct order because we also have direct orders. And this week is going to be available at more bookshops because we are talking with them. It is self-published, not published by the known publishing houses. And therefore, we are also arranging our own distribution with the bookshops. So in another week, it will be in many more outlets and in outlets near you. But there's a bookshop in Village, there's Nuria Bookshop, and other bookshops which I may not all detail. But details on how to get it, go to my either X page, Facebook, or even Instagram page. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Martha Karua. Before we give the final closing remarks for our guest speakers, I'll give 3 minutes to, there's a lawyer, Kenya School of Law, the president, and then there's Joe, 3 minutes each.
I think Joshua has dropped, so we can do Joe and Dr. Christine. I don't see Joshua Kayo, and we hope we can bring him back before the seniors leave.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Mwai.
Oh, okay.
I proceed?
Yes, do.
Go ahead.
Okay. So again, good evening, everyone. It's our pleasure to be here with such great iconic legends. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Professor. You've done us good in history, and we thank you, and we are very grateful. Now, for the questions that Mr. Boni has raised on issues of debt, that he has said that more than 60% of our debt, of our funds go into paying debt. I'd like to raise the issue of whether the IMF loans that we currently have and the World Bank loans are legal. And I want to present to you that they are illegal. There's something that I've sent in the message forum, that since they are illegal, they should not be payable. Mr. Wanjigi has shouted about odious debt for quite a while. So I'd like to read for you two particular aspects. One, the Constitution of Kenya, Article 46, and then I'll read for you Section 13 of the Consumer Protection Act. So Article 46 says this: consumers have the right to goods and services of reasonable quality. Consumers have the right to information necessary for them to gain full benefit from goods and services. Then Part C, consumers have a right for protection of their health, safety, and economic interests. And then Part C is that consumers have a right for compensation for loss, injury arising from defects in goods or services. And then Parliament shall enact a Consumer Protection Act, and that this act shall apply to both public and private. Now, Section 13 reads that it is an unfair practice to make an unconscionable representation. Part 1. Part 2 says, without limiting the generality of what can be taken into account in determining whether a representation is unconscionable, there may be taken into account that the person making the representation or the person's employer or the principal ought to know or should have known that the consumer is not reasonably able to protect his or her of the agreement or similar factors, that the price grossly exceeds the price of similar goods and services readily available to like consumers, that the consumer is unable to receive substantial benefit from the subject matter of the representation, that there is no reasonable probability of payment of the obligation in full by the consumer, that the consumer transaction is excessively one-sided in favor of someone other than the consumer, that the terms of the consumer transaction are so adverse to the consumer as to be inequitable, that a statement of opinion is misleading to the consumer is likely to rely on it to his detriment, that the consumer is being subjected to undue pressure to enter into a consumer transaction. From the reading of that, just that one section, and please take time, read section 12, read 3, read 7, 14, and 15. It means that the loans that we got from IMF are not payable. They are not cautionable. We have data to prove that we had a 95% default probability. Meaning, and this data does not only apply to Kenya, it applies to all African countries. They were aware we could not pay this loan. It was an odious debt, it was a debt trap, and it is an intentional loan so that we can now end up giving up our resources and our other assets in exchange. And that's why you see the Adanis coming in, the private partnerships that do not make sense. All these things that are happening are because we are taking our money out of Kenya and giving it to IMF and World Bank. But these loans, we are filing a petition in court. There's some few aspects of the suit that are remaining. But we want to ask the court that the loans that we have between Kenya and IMF are not payable, they are odious. And we shall not just present data for Kenya, we shall present data for even Ghana, for Nigeria, for Zambia, the entire African continent, that we are being duped by these banks. These loans are not payable. And we are going to ask that since they are not payable, we also want damages. The Constitution provides the same. If you read Section 16 of the Consumer Protection Act, it allows for damages, it allows for exemplary and damages. So my push is that, as previous speakers have indicated, we need different avenues. We are going to try and push this conversation of the debts given to us, all debts given to us by IMF to be declared odious. Let them come to court, let them defend their arguments that what they gave us, if what they gave us was legal. We have used this approach also in the case concerning sanitary products. Redempta and team, you are aware of it. We are with Wanjiru and Dr. Court and a few other members. What all we presented to court is that it's not cotton. And the objective of that case is that Kenya and Africa gets to liberate herself from our women using toxic petroleum-made sanitary products so that the white man can be able to benefit even on our sanitary products, diapers, tampons, wipes, and all these other things. So it's time to take the fight to the white man and to argue it, even from a legal perspective. And even if we were to take this conversation to the ICJ or even in America itself, the question would be very simple. Was Kenya in a position to pay these loans? And if the answer is no, then the loans are not payable. It's poor banking, lending tendencies. It's a breach of their fiduciary duties. It's a breach of their due skills, a breach of duty of honor, duty of conduct. It's a whole lorry of breaches that we believe that we should start a conversation on whether Africa and Kenya generally also should pay their loans. Then finally, to our leaders, when June 25th happened, it was because of protest, and at least there was a semblance of light that Ruto would listen. We knew he wouldn't. He removed the cabinet, then re-put in, and then added even crooks like Joho or Paranya. It's just a mess. But going for Mandamano actually works. And since going to the CBD, going to Uhuru Park, going to Parliament, all these areas that we are trying to go are not successful, I would recommend that we did what Chuka University did, and we close the roads. Find a way to close the roads. Tunaandamana sisi wote as a country. We put it to a halt until our needs are met. And one of the needs that we need to put in is a Ruto mastery.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah. Okay, Redempta. We have Joshua there too for him to submit. Thank you. Joshua, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Hillary, Redempta, Abdi, and all the other co-hosts and everyone else who's committed their time to speak tonight. It's always a pleasure to be in these spaces because this is where we gather our thoughts, and this is where we get ideas to forge forward and to also consolidate our numbers. I think it would be a repetition to speak to the state of the nation. Senior Counsel Martha Karua and also the Honorable Professor Kibwana have, spoke to that. They've spoken to that very conclusively. And the many other speakers that have spoken before me, I just heard Joe Mwai speaking, advocate, and he's spoken to the aspect of consumer protection and to the fact that we need to go after the white man as well, who has a hand in what is happening in Kenya. I think I represent, or so to speak, the young people. And the young people have, in a big way, spurred the conversation that part of which we are still having to date, and that I believe we are going to have moving forward, even into the future. And for that matter, I can authoritatively say that the young people are very much aware of the state of the nation. And just to give an example, we are very much aware of what happened in Embu. More of a political statement, but look, we have to sometimes speak to political issues. Also, we are very much aware of the church. The Catholic Church did a statement calling out the administration of William Ruto, and they were afterwards supported by 30 denominations from the various denominations. We've also had the Corino come out, could be termed as individual or individualistic, but still they were speaking the same language. We've had so many other people coming to support the people of Kenya and saying that, look, the government is not in this to support you, the government is not in this to make your lives better, but it's in this to make the individual people holding positions to gather the much wealth they can within the short time that they have in government. So really, we know all this that is happening, and we cannot be happier that people are waking up, people have woken up, and that we are contributing to the emancipation of the people of Kenya. Moving forward, and I think Professor talked about this, I would want to see a people that are united, the young people, Gen Zs, millennials, and the Gen X, baby boomers, and everyone else, because we need every category of strength. We need intelligence, we need energy and strength to go out there and to run and to do whatnot. We need the minds of professors and doctors and people who can actualize ideas and brainstorm to come up with very, very good ideas to throw out the government of William Ruto. We need people who will advise, even if they would not be interested in vying for political positions. We need people who can advise and who can sit down and come up with committees. People who can direct us to where to where energies matter most. People who can help the younger leaders coming up to where they can source their funds for campaigns, because we also have to speak about that. So many young people would want to get themselves into leadership, into political leadership, but they are not as aggressive as the older generation. Why? Because they know politics is a game of money. You have to get funding, but they are not aware. They don't have any idea where to get this funding. So we need everyone on board. We need everyone on deck. And that's why I think moving forward, and now that we are finishing the year 2024, beginning 2025, and even in this last quarter of the year, we need to have caucuses. We need to have conversations of mixed up generations, young people, old people, the middle aged, so that we discuss on how we are going to bring every effort together. I agree that we need to let everyone exercise their free will to run for political position, but I also believe in garnering the numbers together, because much as everyone would want to lead this nation, there can only be one president at a particular point. There can only be one deputy president at a particular point, and so on and so forth for the other positions. So again, if there's a way we can work out a formula to be able to get the enemy out fast, then we see what we can do afterwards. There's no need for everyone to run for one particular position or one particular office. Yet we have many other departments that require leadership. Today, I saw a video of CS for is it Treasury, John Mbadi, defending so, heartily the actions, or rather the actions of Raila Odinga. He went to support Adani deal and said that Adani has actually procured and has successfully done projects in Mumbai. And what he's saying is that, how do we know, or how could we know that Adani actually bribed someone in Mumbai? So I'm wondering, just basic due diligence could not be done by a whole government on billion Kenya shillings projects. That really tells you that these people are not interested in anything that is going to change the lives and livelihoods of the people of Kenya. So really a lot can be said, but one thing remains. We have to fight together against the enemy. We can use every means possible. We can use different means. We can have different outfits, but our ultimate goal should be to, number one, remove the enemy, and number two, to work together collectively for the better.
Joshua, I'm missing you a bit. I can't hear you. Oh, so we're losing you a bit. Joshua, you need to land. Now your mic is off. I think we need to close the show. Joshua, it's always a pleasure to have you in these shows, and to thank you that even after the experiences you've been through, you're still fighting for your nation. There are two ladies I would like to speak, and we're almost coming to the close. We've already passed the hours.
Yeah, Redemptor, as they come in, I want to tell them that we are past 2 minutes according to our space. So we want to give everybody, when you're giving your final remarks, give your also your closing remarks. So many people requesting mic. We are very sorry that we cannot add any more speakers at the moment due to our guests have been here for more than 4 hours. And it is healthy also to keep time all the time. And we would thank you so much, guys. So I think we go with Jean, then Saidia, then Dr. Nyango, in that order. Then Christine, 1-2 minutes at most. Then the Prof and Senior Council will close to us. Demta.
Yes, Leah, Jean Leah.
Yeah, so thank you for this piece. So I've been listening to these spaces for quite a minute, like here and there, right? But it just seems sometimes like we're just regurgitating the known, right? I think the known here is, we all know that Ruto leadership is not good for Kenya. That's a known fact, right? And I think there are quite a few people that have said, what is the solution? And to me, I just want to say real quick what I think the solution should be. A practical solution that I think every Kenyan can rally behind, because there is no way that, I know Martha Karua has said, okay, you want to be the president of Kenya, but how can you want to be while the institution that is tasked with running, the mandate of, that function is not constituted? So for me, I think one thing I'd like to propose is that, the Civic, we have a Civic coalition that really pushes for just one agenda. We just need the IBC to be constituted by March, right? Bring the church together, bring the Gen Z together, bring all the leaders that want to run for presidency, bring all them together and form a coalition for just that one purpose. And when that purpose is achieved, you dismantle the coalition, right? And you just have a time frame. Let's have it by March. We need IEBC constituted by March. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Over to you, Redemptor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I think we'll just have two more speakers. We seem to have not lost, they had actually told us they would be leaving. I say Professor Sylvia, Dr. Christine Sadia.
Thank you very much, Redemptor. I will take the shortest time possible because of time. I'm always grateful to be here and to be given a mic, but also to buy into the thought process of colleagues that have been at the political spaces, but also knowing that, which has been acknowledged by my friend Martha, that there are many branches of leadership. I think Professor Kibwana is the one who said so. Yes, there are those people that have ideas, but they are not in the political space. And when we come here, a lot of it is a political space. Sometimes we miss getting the opportunity to contribute as Kenyans who are patriotic about the thing. But it's always a pleasure. Leah, I hear you, and I want to concur with what you are saying. I have been in these spaces, but what really gets me sometimes get off and stay away, and when I come back, I find it the same, is that we are at the analysis stage. We are analyzing, over-analyzing. We know the problem, and Professor Kibwana has already said, we know the problem. What stops us from the doing? What stops us from the doing? And I want to give a few thoughts of what stops us from the doing. I think we are so preoccupied by talking in the space and people listening and a few people, because the 4 hours, the people who have spoken, vis-a-vis the number of people that are listening, really, is there something that we could do differently? I sort of like at some point thought that I bought the idea of coalescing people in a think tank. I'm hearing a caucus. I'm hearing coalitions. I think those are things that have worked. For those of us who have been in the women's movement, and I was with Mother in the women's movement as when she was still the magistrate in Makadara. And we had very many of them. What worked for women? I was in the National Council of Women of Kenya. What is it that we did that perhaps could be borrowed? I hear a lot of people who want to be in silos, in their spaces of their comfort, where their professions. But that is not how we are going to win the war. The war will be won in trenches with many people putting their ideas together.
Did we lose Christine? Okay, maybe now we
No,
can go
I
to
was
Professor
muted.
and Senior Counsel.
No,
Oh,
no,
she's
no.
still here. She's still here, please.
Okay.
Somebody muted me, so let me just
Yeah,
finish,
finish the
because
carry.
this is what frustrates some of us, the boomers. We come, we want to contribute, then we are frustrated. Let me say this. I think we begin to look at different things. Talking in these spaces for all of us who are in the women's movement, sometimes you need a private space for getting the idea, because already these ideas, as we are speaking them, they're already known to the political people. There is as whatever are there. But if we speak on face to face, is there a will, a goodwill? Are we convinced that we are patriotic enough that we can produce this? We can give our time, sit together, conceptualize, and do the doing. Going to the grassroots, I think we will have to do a bottom up and a up bottom. For me, when I was out of this, I've been at the village. I've just come from the village. I'm going back tomorrow. I am finding that it's working for me. I'm changing a lot of mindset. People are buying because I'm interfacing, I'm talking to them. So I just want to say that the space of health is very bad. I am a doctor, medical doctor. And right now we are losing quite a number of people. It is not that there are things that cannot be done. I have already just done a synthesis and a summary since independence, and what UHC is and what SHA is taking away. So if that is going to help people to maybe enrich their spaces, that document will be out in the next 3 days. I'm thinking of putting it in the newspaper. I don't know whether that's the right place, but we are here. Somebody was asking, who is it that can do something without money? Some of us have done things without money since we were born. Can we get a space where we can also help and put the ideas and do the analysis? We have helped other nations out, which are not Kenya. I was with Zimbabwe, with the opposition of Zimbabwe, just soon after Mugabe took it. We have ideas. So can we find a space where we just don't talk and analyze, but we bring practical solution that will coalesce Kenyans so that we have a groundswell that will shake this nation? We will not shake it if we are only a few of us talking here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daktari. And always, I'll keep in touch. And thank you so much for bringing more ideas and see and what we can do. Dr. Nyang, Dr. Daktari, Duncan, then Bonnie, Milton, then Dr. Prof, then Honorable Karua will close to us. Yeah. Go ahead, Daktari. We are hearing.
Thank you so much, Hilary. Always glad to be here and to see brilliant minds, Honorable Martha Karua, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, Bonnie Mwangi, Joshua Okayo, and all the rest, Joe Mwai and the class action lawsuits that he leads. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was supposed to speak here in the first hour, but I had to step out to do a presentation in another meeting. But I'm glad to be back, and I have listened.
Daktari, we can't hear you.
I think conclude by saying that the state of the nation we already know, and we feel it. When you see we have to struggle so hard to explain to us that the economy is doing well, and then you know it's not doing well. So when it will be doing well, we will feel it. President Kibaki didn't have to belabor the point too much to explain to us that the economy was doing well. The blame game of trying to divert the blame of the war on corruption from the executive to the judiciary to the ODPP, I think those are diversionary tactics. It is not time for us to hear presidents complaining to us the way Uhuru complained to us that they are losing 2 billion. We are going to have another president complaining to us that we are losing 2 billion from the economy, yet they have an opportunity to do something about it. So those are brilliant points. Then I think in the first hour, somebody had raised a point concerning the presidential bid of Okia Omtata. And I've also heard what Honorable Martha Karua said very explicitly about how we need to work together. And I love what the challenge from Dr. Christine Sadia, very insightful points there about the action. Actually, I've been away from this space for a long time because it was time to go to the ground and do something. And we have done a lot. I know we have been with Akina Boni Mwangi in various forums, trying to put our heads together, Joe Mwai in Kilimo Chahaki and the other initiative they are running together with Mary Kathomi and all these initiatives. We have been on the ground trying to take that challenge that Dr. Christine Sadia has so strongly put to us, because I'm a firm believer that we have to do something. And I am glad to say that, as Dr. Christine has said, we have jumped out of our comfort zones. I had to convince myself, instead of just staying in class, to step out of class so that we can be able to be part of liberating this country and bringing the change that we want. And I am also glad to have been, I work with, I actually lead now a caucus called Changemakers Alliance, which is a political caucus that has been working very closely with Okia Omtata, even in the days leading up to the formation of the exploratory committee that he gazetted the other day. And Mary Kathomi, who now chairs, got an opportunity to chair that panel, is a lady that we've also worked with in Kilimo Chahaki to be able to push against the agriculture issues that we are talking about. So I strongly agree with the Honorable Martha Karua that let everyone who has the capacity to be able to take leadership step forward. Let them rally their constituencies, and let the time come for us to be able to sit together and form one big, formidable national movement that is going to stand against status quo in 2027 or the next time we have a chance to go to elections, because that is the way to go. So when you see Morara saying he will be on the ballot, let us not insult him.
let him mobilize his forces and get ready for the time. We need Honorable Martha Karua also to come strongly against the present tide. We need Honorable Kivutha Kibwana, everyone who can be on the presidential ballot. Let them come out, let them tell us what they can do. Let us come to that opportunity where we can sit. And personally, I've been able to sit down with Okiya Omtatah. And one thing that he was very clear about, that he told us, is that we can't, our problem is too big. It can't be solved by one person. We don't need a messiah because you're not going to have one. And Okiya Omtatah told us, sat us down and told us, Dan, even if you send me to the current system as it is, I can tell you that the system will either swallow me, kill me, or compromise me. Because the problem we are fighting is a systemic problem that requires Kenyans to sit down and build like-minded Kenyans to build a movement that is strongly founded on ideology, proper ideological and policy frameworks, which you already have. We agree as Kenyans that this is the way we want to govern ourselves. This is what we are going to do about corruption. This is what we're going to do about education. This is what we are going to do about everything that bedevils us. Then ultimately ask ourselves, who is the best driver to drive us to the destination? And Okiya told us that if there will be a better driver in the course of time that will come up, and people will sit down and agree that, hey, you look like the best driver to drive this change, then he will be willing to take it up. But if there will be any other better, he will also be willing to work with such people to let us drive the vehicle forward. So let us step out and let us be able to talk. The ground is very ready.
Okay,
I've also spent, as I close, I've also spent a lot of time going to the grassroots. We've been to Embu, we've been to Kajiado the other day. One Kajiado man we met on the way just told us, uongo ndo mingi, ukora ndo mingi, sisi ndo tulichagua, lakini hatutaki tena. So that is the feeling of the ground, and we've seen it all over, in Nairobi, in Meru, in Lamu. So we just need to continue doing what we are doing. And if you've not stepped out to the field to do something, please step up. Let us be able to work and bring the change that we want. We have a republic. If we can keep it, we lost it. We must be able to recover it so that we can keep it and move with it. Thank you very much, Hillary, for the time. I hope we will have better time to speak in the future. God bless you.
We are here every Sunday, bro. So no worries. Don't worry. This conversation, we must take it to another level. And I thank you so much, Dr. for what you're doing. And I know we've been having a lot of conversation about what is happening. And we thank you so much because the focus is one. And Professor Dr. Christine is coming on board, and she's a volunteer in every sector. So I know we're gonna have a great conversation. This time I want to bring back our speakers of the day.
Yeah, Hillary, let me read a few comments before.
How many comments are
1
there?
minute. I'll read two from Kabando wa Kabando. Good governance in circumstances. All we need is unity of purpose based on publicity, enacted, proclaimed, declared, and vote, sworn integrity, charter, spearheaded by chapters of change, comprising mostly of conscious Gen Zs. We older generations must light Gen Z's torch. And then we have somebody also by the name, is there any way, it's called Korene, is there a question to Professor Kivutha Kibwana, is there any way you senior leaders like you and Mother Karua can seek audience with the young leaders like Akina Morara, Hanifa Mkenya, Daima, etc., to guide and also team up a movement united in a strong way? So I'll leave it there. There's a lot of comments coming. We can always look at it, and the Honorable Senior Council can respond to them. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you so much, Abdi, for reading all those comments. Guys, we're not closing. It's only that Prof is going to class in the morning, so we want him to give it time at least. And I know Honorable Senior Council Mata Karua also gave us 2 hours, and she has been here, and we appreciate their time. That's why the rest who are in the speakers don't leave. We're going to give you time to wind up the space. Prof, if you're here, and we really appreciate your time, for coming and share with us wisdom. And we'll not get tired to invite you all the time to converse on these issues of our country and making our way betterment of our country. So I want to welcome you at this point, also to chime in and give your final remarks.
Thank you, Hilary. If the students uh, push me out of the class tomorrow, I'll say it is Hilary. That I was within 4 hours when I was trying to prepare. I really appreciate this, very insightful conversation. Very rich, and we are going in a good way towards, what is the solution and how do you actualize it. Let me say this, that when the Gen Zs were really in charge, so to speak, all manner of people were supporting them. People saying that, they're doing a good thing, and, everybody was going towards them and saying that, they have, a solution, they are saying the right things. Again, if you go to even Mau Mau, you find that it wasn't really like Idivint was saying that now me, I'm going to lead this thing and, I will be, again, it was group leadership. And even those people didn't have a lot of education. They came together and they had cells and they were working from various places, various communities, and trade unions also involved. Some of the very conscientious politicians like Pinto and so on, supporting Bildad Kagia and so on. If you come to the NCA, NCC, civil society, even the faiths being there and political opposition, again, it was a group of many people working together. And even the Gen Zs, even they said that they were leaderless and all that. You saw that there were, if I can say, luminaries among them who are working together. So I think from the very beginning, Milton said, and more recently, Joshua said, if people don't work together, it won't work. And we shall be, or you will be, or I don't know, how to characterize it, mincemeat. Because you're against people who have been here for 6 decades, and they know, the system. They have the money, they have the networks, they have, many advantages. And so that is why I think that it is really time for, all these people have been in these spaces saying, why don't we have a physical? Why? Because we know each other. We know the people who drive, whether it's the X spaces, who drive the political parties of progressive people, who drive, who are good, who are positive in the faith sector, who are, civil society, who are all those spaces. So that people come and say, okay, what do we think is the way forward? Because when the country begins to see these people together, then the country has a reference point. As of now, if it is one group on its own, another group of its own, and so on and so forth, the people are saying, all those entities are kind of separated. They are kind of weak. So they are not able to really see like how it happened during the Mau Mau, it happened during the NCNCC, the Gen Zs. They are not able to see the group that they are attracted to, the magnet. Yes, I agree, people can build their candidatures and so on, and build their political parties and so on, but we don't have time. There isn't time. If by 2026, let us say by June, end of June, something has not come together to excite Kenyans, then Kenyans might not ultimately believe that there is another solution. And that's when they'll go back to their tribal things. So I would myself say we need that kind of, it was called, a civic group coalition. It was called by many, that needs to be there. And within it, you can have those people who are doing the political thing, who are saying, okay, we are building, like you have political parties within it, which are progressive. If it is Martha as a political party, or Kia as a political party, Morara as a political party, whoever are identified as progressive people, so there is room for them there. There is room for people who are trying to say, what is the manifesto? Like Akenaboni, who say, what is really this economic thing that must be done to the people's Manainji manifesto that is being worked on? Who is going to do civic education to reach, the grassroots that is worked on, and all that kind of stuff, so that there is a movement. Because if Kenyans don't see a movement, as I said earlier, they will simply say, oh, okay, well, it looked like the Gen Z said something, there's a sequel group. But the more we say we are going to work separately for a long time, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but if we take too long, then we abort that vision that people maybe are waiting for. And let me, as I conclude, also say that if Raila does not get this seat of AU, who knows? He might at some point decide that, he's going to be a candidate again. So I'm sure if Ruto saw that he was having a hard time, and there was, Raila who can, be a friend and be put forward, that can be agreed on. They can agree on that. They can even agree on Kalonzo, because they know that all those guys will not hurt them. So we really need to be woke and realize that if we don't have a game soon, then we will be played. And, in Kiswahili, they say, mapinduzi si lele mama. And there was a quotation of Maya Angelou, and I still rise. And so, we don't have a lot of time. And I don't see why, all those people who are saying that they are progressive, as Kabando did say, just having like a cup of tea, even if they are, for the time being, growing their outfits, like have a cup of tea. Kenyans see them and they see that even if not immediate, but there is a journey, and the journey will come to fruition, and you give people hope. For me, that is what has worked historically, whether it's Mamo, it's NCC, Gen Z, that is what has worked historically. And I laughed when Fabi said, Kibwana is a good leader. The problem is that he's not a fighter. But maybe some of the younger people don't know our history. How, we fought with Moi for the Katiba. How even in Makueni, just a small county, we had to fight to say that corruption can't work, and so on and so forth. But there is learning for all of us. And I like the Gen Z, Gen Zote. I really like that. And I applaud, all the people who, Hillary, who do this kind of, who help, to get conversations going. Abdi, Redemptor, and all your colleagues, because these spaces are very important, because many ideas are coming through, and the work of Akina Boni, Akina Joshua, Akina everybody, what Duncan was saying and so on. We have a good thing. Let's not lose it. And I thank you so much for being here with us. I have taken all the hours, 4 hours and a half, and I'm now nervous that tomorrow I'll be in trouble. But Hillary, thank you, and I yield.
I'm sorry about that, Prof. But we really appreciate your time. And always when you're in space, we get more wisdom. And the way you're saying, we want you on board to get these stories, and also to know the struggles is not starting with us, but it started a long time ago. And how can we achieve it better? And that's why we need all this conversation. We need everybody on board. and you know, most of the time, sometimes we measure on mistakes sometimes we make in life, but who else doesn't have we are not righteous, you know. Sometimes we are not righteous, but we, all of us, we have weaknesses, but weaknesses can be developed together when we have a conversation and move on as a team. And that's why we invite you to come here to share with us the ideas. And we thank you so much, Prof, all the time that you are available to converse with us and share with us the wisdom. We thank you so much. And kesho naamini ya kwamba utatoka darasani, utakuwa pale, na hata najua wanafunzi wengine wako hapa saizi. Honorable Martha Karua, I want to again hand over the mic to you.
Okay, I will try and be very brief. I want to agree with Christine, who said that sometimes we speakers, whoever is called as a speaker at a given X space, we hog the time, and then other people don't get the chance. Maybe it could be held differently, where each speaker is given no more than 5 minutes at a go. Just a thought, so that everybody feels they have the time to speak. I would just say very few things. Joe Mwai, a salute to you and your team, the work you're doing in court. I agree with you, odious debt, which in other words just means an illegitimate debt. And one of the reasons a debt becomes illegitimate is because it has no consent of the people. And in Kenya, that's significant because the Constitution talks of public participation. So that, together with the consumer rights you're talking about, it is possible to challenge. There are countries, I'm forgetting which country, challenged a debt with those institutions successfully. It is possible. But even if we were to pay the debt as a country, mambo ni kujipanga. What do we do when we have a crisis of cash at home? We align our priorities and see where to start. So what we are lacking, and which is against the Constitution, is prudent management of our resources. We do not have a revenue problem. The streams of revenue keep coming in, but we have an expenditure problem, especially non-priority spending. So it's good that you put these Bretton Woods institutions on notice. By going to court, they will know that the money they keep on loaning Kenya without the consent of the people, just like their Adani deal, will hit the rocks very soon. There was a suggestion that we should prioritize having the IEBC. I think we have several issues, because even if we had an IEBC today, which is likely to be promptly captured by Ruto and his regime, would we be able to get very far with it amidst extrajudicial killings, kidnapping, arbitrary arrests, and all that is happening? Whereas I agree IEBC is urgent, we may need a coalition, as being suggested, with religious organizations and all people of goodwill, but we need not concentrate on one issue. It could be stop the extrajudicial killings, arbitrary arrests, abduction, uphold the rule of law, and stop the hemorrhage of our money. That is, in other words, stop corruption. It could also include the IEBC and any other issue we feel urgent, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, or 3 issues where we push relentlessly. And if all these people are pushing, something would have to give. And it would also be an occasion for creating awareness in the country on what the issues are. And therefore, if health is thrown in there and education, it mobilizes more people. So it's a good idea to think about it, about a coalition to push for the immediate, and even pushing the issue of issuance of ID cards, because most of the Gen Z may not have ID cards, and most of them may not even be registered as voters. So it's a good idea. It may not be one issue, it could be multiple issues, but it's all good together. I hear you all. I am in agreement. Kenya is greater than any one of us. We must come up with a way of how we can work together. And yes, there is willingness to work with the Gen Z, with everyone, all people of goodwill. We were mentored by those we found, we stood on their shoulders, and not necessarily on a sit-down mentorship. Even by seeing what people are doing, you get mentored. Personally, I'm ready to engage and to mentor young people and to work with people of all generations to ensure that we run this rogue regime out of town and that capable Kenyans sit and deliver the country from where we are. I thank you. And I seek to be let off now.
Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa Martha Karua. And the way you said, we all the ideas coming on board, and we are coming on the table whereby we need all these ideas. And Kivutha Kibwana have said something. Prof has said that if we are not careful, then the time will cut us off. But we don't want that thing to happen, because for sure, Kenya need new leadership, and that's what we are working on. And then we'll not get tired. And we want to see next year things are already pick up, and on the Kenyan say that they're the person that's going to do that. So, but also leaders, we're requesting you. We're calling you here to have this conversation, but also we want to see this. We want to stop this individualism. When we do that, then it's gonna give us the easy way, also as Kenyans, to make a right decision going forward. And we need people who will speak up, who will do the things that they said, because we don't want people also. We don't want to talk here and then again you cannot come together as leaders. We try our best to bring you together and see, and you sit on the table and agree, and we get a better way forward. This is what young Kenyans want, and this is the young people want, and that you see that they're talking about tribalists, leaderless, and everything. But when you come together, let us have a team that will converge us together. And what we are saying here should we just not say them, because these things are being recorded, and the media doesn't lie. We will bring them back. This is what we said this day. So what are the actions that we need to take? So the action, as we take action, let us come together and let us join the team together. Redempta, can you do the last session with Abdi? Then we went right. But Martha Karua, Honorable Kibwana, don't get tired when we reach out for you to come and converse with us. And also on this, on not only here but even in other platforms, when we call you individually or on physical meetings, let us meet and see how best we can make our country better country. Na mtu amesema hapa ya kwamba tunaongea kizungu sana, kwa hivyo next time tumesikia, tutajaribu kuongea Kiswahili pia, ndio watu wengine ambao huenda kawa lugha zingine zinapita tuweze kuelewana sisi zote. Otherwise, nimeshukuru sana, Mungu awazidi kubariki. Redempta or Abdi.
Yeah, we give our guests honors. They are guests of honors. They've given us time to leave. It's okay for them to leave. Abdi, before you go, Joshua was speaking and his mic went off. So just guide us. What would you like us to do now?
Thank you. Redempta will still be going. We'll let our guests go before I let in Bonnie. I'll read a few comments that our readers have been asking. And there is one that is there from Joe Mwai. The loan given by IMF and World Bank are unconstitutional, unconscionable, and unconstitutional. They are audacious debt, illegal, and thus not payable. He quoted Section 3, 7, 13, 13, 14, 15, 16, 84, and Article 46 of the Constitution. Thank you, Joe, for that. And I'll read one more comment from 254 for life. The nation is staring at a grip for hope because everything seems to be going wrong. Redempta, over to you. Bonnie, also, you can chime in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are growing because we are getting to the intergenerational conversations, although we don't have many. Joshua Okayo, a young student leader, I hope you've finished your exams and you're ready to come back to finish what you started because you're part of the Gen Z movement. And Joshua challenged me one time by saying that the parents or the older generation left them to this fight. And you had made a long submission. I would want you to summarize, and then we can wind up with our speakers. I think I don't know if we'll give one person who hasn't spoken. I would like Dr. Sadia to come back. And because Dr. Sadia meets a young lawyer, maybe a word of encouragement for the young generation, the ones who are brutalized. So Joshua, here you have an opportunity to tell us what we can do to make these conversations so that we don't leave you to struggle to your own devices. Joshua, just address yourself to that.
Thank you, Redemptor. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Well, I'm still doing my bar exams. I'll be finishing on Tuesday. So I've been coming in and also getting to my books, just alternating between books and spaces, because again, I don't want these conversations to pass by without me getting to know what people are talking about. What to do? We have to keep the conversation going because this is what keeps the momentum. And it doesn't matter how many people we reach in a day. The many days that we meet, add on to the number of people we meet, because today we have 200 different people. The next space we have maybe 300, 500, and that's how we grow. And that's how we keep the momentum. I know there are many young people who can get tired. One, because they are, when there are no conversations about liberation. And also, number two, if they are not actively engaged or involved in what is happening. So we have to keep the conversation going. Number two, we have to keep the young people engaged in activities that are geared towards the liberation. And I love someone coined and said we are not doing civic education because I think it was Senior Counsel Martha Karua that no one has monopoly of knowledge. So that then we have civic engagements across the country. This is all we have to do. This is all we have to do. Civic engagement across the country in whichever way. It could be on matters democracy, it could be on matters leadership, it could be on empowerment and all that kind of stuff, because all these contribute to one thing. We know very well that the government in place is not doing anything to better the lives of the young people in Kenya. And that means they are not empowered. That means they are not free and they cannot freely speak in their own country. And that means that they cannot be served with justice, especially the young people whose lives were taken, the young people whose health has been taken away. There are people who are nursing their injuries. There are people who are down, cannot do anything. So really, all these will be summed up to one thing. And then we agree and have a general Gen Zote convention where we are making a pronouncement that the people of Kenya are tired and sick of the Kenya Kwanza administration, and that we are making a decree that they have to go home. I think everyone is waiting for that moment. Everyone is looking forward to a Kenya where we shall be speaking a different language and everyone will be free and justice will be served for all. So we have to keep the engagement going. We have to, much as we could be working in different outfits, much as everyone would want to do something, in one way or another, let's find a way to work together. Ultimately, it's all we got. It's all that will deliver, deliver us to the Kenya we want. So thank you so much. And to those that continue hosting these spaces, Redemptor, you've been very consistent. And Hillary, I've seen Abdi as well. You guys are doing a wonderful job of bringing us together to be able to put our heads together. This is the match we need to do. Not everything requires money, but that which we can do at the comfort of our homes and still contribute to the movement, let us do it as early as now. Asanteni, na may you wish me all the best in my exams tomorrow and Tuesday. God bless you.
We really do wish you all the best in your exams. And I continue to admire your resilience, despite the challenges that system put you through. Dr. Christine, I hear your frustration, but as you close, you understand the liberation movement in the 80s had the difference of not having social media and having more Kenya. Can people really come here and do tangibles? Can we share the plans people are making without them being countered? We have seen the state mirror some of the things to the extent when the song Anguka Nayo was what was used against them, then they paid those young people to perform for them. Just close us in as much as we are all talk. What can we do publicly and how can the helping be more structured? We'd like to learn as you close.
Thank you very much, Redemptor. And you are one person that I have followed from the time that we were with you in Afia House, and you've been consistent. I just want to affirm, yes, there's no way we are going to leave the spaces, the social media, and the new way of doing things. However, we have to maybe look at how then we conceptualize, strategize, and then what we communicate then becomes a tool for communicating a thought that has been processed in certain spaces that are not being hijacked, because as we speak and we have not crystallized it, then it becomes very easy for somebody to hijack it and then make it their own. But once it has been processed and it is communicating actions, or it is communicating publicizing what then needs to take place, it is a great place. Like when you remember when the Gen Z movement was very something that I keep on admiring, and something that I think is only novel for Kenya, because the number of people that were rich that came out with their water in their hands, and they had where they were meeting, and they had a common and they had not met. I think that is something that we must admire, and we do not want to lose. If you hear Joshua speaking, one thing that I admire also the resilience of the young people. However, I think what perhaps worked differently during our time, that there were common spaces that for us who were young people then, we were in a house with people like for me, I would say Grace Onyango, Mama Sio, the women, Waruhio, the likes of Honorable Waruhio. They mentored me, and I still walk on their shoulders. I still meet with Waruhio, and she gives me a few tips. So if we can also have spaces where we encourage each other, like Josh is going to do his exam, we wish him all the best. They have been brutalized. Sometimes when we just need to give them strength to move on, that it is okay sometimes when you feel defeated, but you breathe, you take your breath, and you move, because you have a common cause and you have an agenda. So for me, Redemptor is something that I would like to think through and conceptualize. How then do we use this space, but at the same time, like we were saying in those caucuses or in a think tank, which I think somebody had said in the beginning when I joined, a think tank helps you to conceptualize things. Like when we were working through just before Mugabe, the independence of Zimbabwe, I used to meet with young people from Zimbabwe here in Nairobi. They would fly in, or I would fly, we meet in South Africa. So there are spaces for meeting physically. There are things that you need to talk when you are thinking, you debate, you do back and forth, and you say the best strategy then is this. Then it can be communicated to the whole here without somebody hijacking, because you've processed it. But there are certain hidden things that you are not speaking. You are speaking what you want people to hear, but the real strategy of how you are going to hit is not being said. So that is what I found that worked for us better. When I led the women, even in the Angola peace process, that is something that we used. I used to move, and we moved together as women. The conception, I said, at the moment, we just said, no, the women of Angola are not coming back until you have agreed to have some solution of some sort, political solution that will not kill women and children. So I guess there are things, Redemptor, thank you for saying that. This is a great space, and it is a more of a groundswell. But we must also realize that there are those people that would want to hear people who speak to them in their hearts, because they do not know what is being spoken in this space, whether people are sometimes afraid of this space, speaking in this space. I was at the village, and that is one thing that I learned, that speaking with people on a face-to-face sometimes has something that it does. Even if there was an anxiety and they did not want to believe you, what you are saying something, and they are of a different persuasion, but when you talk to them heart to heart, they change. So that is something that I found. So we may have to use a mixed method, a hybrid method, and that's why we were calling for sometimes, maybe when you're thinking through, you could think of some group that could be able to, a hybrid group with young people, intergenerational, that will be able to get this thought process put forward and the methodology of work both online and offline. I think then, but what, like Joshua was saying, when we finish, then we use the tool, and if Kenyans could come out really, the way he's saying, and say, we are tired, this is what now we want, we are now making an ultimatum, and it is of all generations, is Gen Zote generation. I think it is something that would be beautiful, would add to what the Gen Zs have done, and I want to applaud the Gen Zs, the people who have worked, the generations that have come before us. You have a lot of skills. You have a lot of what God has given you, the ability to conceptualize. Your IQ is much higher than ours. The only sometimes things that frustrate most of the Gen Zs is that they want to see results quicker. For us, what worked for us, that we were taking it slowly. If you want to see a change for people who have mastered, like Professor Kibwana had said, people who have been at it for 60 years, how do you dismantle them within 2 hours or within days? Very difficult sometimes. So you must look at their tracks and the roads, and you say, this is where they are weak, this is where their strength are, this is where if we do you this and this, and we mix this and this, then perhaps you're weakening their tracks, or you will beat them at their own game. So the Redemptor, thanks you. I know you have not, I may not have given you a very clear cut what you wanted, but it's something that I'm ready to pick up with you, because I know we are in a conversation, we can converse. It's something that I could put down something and give you, so that you can also look at it with your team and with the young people and see whether it will be working or not. But don't leave the space. It is a very important tool. And in any case, where the world is going, we are not going to get off this social media issue and being on an online platform. So how we use it to our advantage is what we need to find out. How do we use, when do we use it, that it is not being hijacked? How do we use it? Is it after we have refined and synthesized? Sometimes it will be for brainstorming, like today, great ideas have come. But then who picks this great idea and synthesize them and bring them to practicality? What Leah had said, that we want practical things that then will work. So thank you very much. And I thank you all. May God bless you all. You are great people. You mean well for this nation. Let us just be at it and encourage each other, so that we don't get fatigued. We are there also with some of our programs. If one needs self-care, some mental talk, Redemptor, you could reach out, then we can organize some spaces online. Self-care, in mental self-care. We also would like to give that as well at some point when it is necessary or is needed. Because being on this space sometimes fatigues you, but you need to do self-care. We need to do a lot of more self-care. Sometimes getting a breather and just getting out, and just affirming yourself that you've done your best. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. And thank you for your service to the nation and to Africa. And Dr. Joshua, I think you've been encouraged to know there are people like Dr. Sadia who are ready to come back. And I've said before, hell has no fury than women scorned. Like, you've hurt our children, and that's why you're seeing people coming from retirement to address the nation. I'll do a round of closing remarks. I know there are people who have their hands up, they have not spoken. So let me mix and match the people who are here before.
Redemptor, could you give Bonnie his rushing somewhere, then he can make.
Yes, that's what I wanted to know. I'd asked who comes first. So, Bonnie, your last submissions, and we make them short so we close the show. Asanteni.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you can hear me. Well, let me thank all of you patriots for your attention and your time and your contributions to today's discussion. We appreciate you. I want to close up by reminding you that what is at stake in the next 3 years is not just who's going to be president. It's not just about who's going to be in government. I 100% believe that what is at stake in the next 3 years is about who are we going to be, the character of our nation, the soul of the nation. The reason why we're on this call is because we are rejecting what this government is telling us who we are, right? They tell us that we are a country that's dominated by 2% of the population, a country that's dominated by criminals and charlatans, a country that says it's fine for the 2% of the population to eat up everything until they vomit, leaving everyone else, the 98%, without a future, without schools, without working hospitals, without infrastructure. And we reject that. And so the next 3 years is defining that character of our nation. It's making sure that the government that we have reflects our values, reflects who we are and what we believe in. And the best way to impact this is to get involved, right? Do not let other people define your destiny and your future for you. Get involved, because the next 3 years, in my view, defines who we're going to be for a very long period of time. The disconnect that you see between us and the politicians that have developed our country for a long time is they don't understand that the average Kenyan, the young Kenyan, is rejecting that. The idea that we are going to allow 2% of the population to eat up everything, consume all our resources, the entitlement to our money, to waste, to eat and do whatever they want with it, without us asking questions, tells you everything you need to know about our philosophy. We have a different philosophy as young Kenyans, and we are trying to make sure that our government reflects that. So get involved, not let other people define the future for you. Get involved and shape your destiny with your thoughts and your actions and your contributions. Thank you.
Very well said, and keep up the work. And for those who do not know, Bonnie Mwangi is doing analysis of the expenditures of all the counties. I will let Engineer Lawrence go, and please understand we are doing very short presentations at this point. Engineer Lawrence and then Dr. Milton.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to also appreciate the host and the co-host for this space. So my name is Engineer Lawrence and I hail from Nyamira County. First and foremost, I'm here as a very disappointed citizen from Nyamira County, because Nyamira County is one of the key counties that has benefited zero since the hatching of devolution in 2013. I've been able to do my research that why is it that over time, since 2013 up to now, we've had devolution and we have benefited nothing since then. It's because that the leaders that we're putting in place, most of them, when we come to voting time, most of the people vote based on there's something in our local language we call Ogosero. That is whereby the politicians, they come and they give people 100 bob, 200 shillings, 500 shillings, and that is where the mess begins. The voters, they vote based on who is giving more and who is not giving more money during the voting period. So I believe if we have to solve this problem, we need to come up with key solutions. And one of them being, we need to do civic education on all Kenyans from each and every county to make them understand that they need to vote based on the person himself, what he's able to do, and how can we vote out the people who are not going to represent us in the correct way. Sometimes we can all say that this is a problem in the national government, but again, even in the local governments, we have leaders who are not able to lead in the correct way because they are there having gone for loans to do campaigns, and during the time they are supposed to work for Kenyans, they are now using the money for Kenyans to pay back those loans. And that is why we are not seeing the results. Another key thing we need to look at, especially the young generation, we as the Gen Zs, most of us Of course, we are focused on coming up with solutions, but we do not have enough finances. Some of us have begun initiatives that do not have the correct funding. How can we come together and come up with a solution to this crisis of funding? We understand that currently there is no circulation of money in the country. Can we be able to come together as a team and work together, especially the youth, and see how we can be able to solicit funds, put them together to move from one county to another to do this ground mobilization in terms of civic education on the correct voting. That is one of the basic problems I've realized, especially from the county level. I don't want to speak a lot. I hope we get more time next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for gracing our show. Dr. Milton, closing remarks.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to make my closing remarks. It actually feels very satisfying to see and hear the sentiments expressed by Honorable Martha Karua, Professor Kibwana, and everybody that has spoken here. We want to appreciate and salute everyone for taking their time to be here. I want to be very brief, and my conclusion is going to be one simple statement. We have spoken for too long, we have diagnosed, we have analyzed the problem for way too long. It's time for us to now get on the ground and take action. I think, in all honesty, I want to see initiatives has been said here. It is time to caucus, time to come together, pile up the pressure, and make sure that we do everything, deploy every strategy on the book with military precision to make sure that we run Ruto and his cabal out of town. There is no other choice. The longer it takes, the more our people will suffer, and our country will continue to go into ruins. And that we will be judged very harshly by history if we do not do something about it. And the time to do that is now. Let's fill up these spaces. Let us spam their Twitter handles or wherever it is that they are trying to do these things, and make sure that the ground is also impossible for them to do anything until they run out of town. This is what has been said, and I want to end with a reminder of that statement. When our fear is gone, they lose their power. Thank you, and may God bless you. Have a great week ahead. See you again. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Asante sana, Dr. Milton. And thank you for your passion for your country to be better than it is right now. I'll allow one more person, and then my hosts can close the show. Ronyo, sorry, just under 1 minute, because unfortunately we've had enough. We just want people to, Mizani 254 is on the panel now. Oh, Ronyo, 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate Redemptor. I will not take much of your time. I have been listening, and thank you for everybody who has contributed. I wanted just to say something just for under 1 minute that I was when we were having a conversation here yesterday. I kept on thinking, what is the problem that is ailing all African country? And since we started getting independent since 1950, the bigger problem that we have, and our colonial masters, they kind of went and restructured their own way of making sure that, because I really believe that the problem, as one of the speakers said, is not who we put there in power, because most of the leaders, they always have very good ideas when they are coming to us for election, but after they get to those seats, they kind of have to conform to whatever our colonial masters have structured on making sure that they are checking us, or they are making sure we are not misbehaving. I heard most of the time President Ruto saying we need food security, but you look at, for them, our colonial master, they don't have anything like food security. What they have is what they call food sovereignty, and that's what we don't have in Africa. And I think it will reach a point where
all of us have to say what Burkina Faso and Niger and Mali has said, that it is now or never, that we have to put an end to these things that are happening in our country. Thank you so much, and God bless all of you.
Thank you, Ronyo. Mizani 254, always a pleasure to meet in these spaces. Your submissions.
Thank you very much, Redemptor and Hilary Abdi. On behalf of Mizani, this is Eli speaking, and I would love to just congratulate you guys for the wonderful job you're doing. And number two, I've listened through the space and the leaders that were here to converse with us. And one thing that is certain is Kenya is in need of a rebirth, and the rebirth is requiring all of us to be hands on deck. And therefore, I was pleasured when I saw Honorable Kiomtata announcing that he's formulating a team that will look to his possibility of running for presidency. And therefore, I took upon myself and the team that we work with to try and curate something towards the same. Tomorrow we'll be having a conversation to look at what should a leader be. And that leader, we are looking at Omtata as the first case. We should be able to see more other persons coming up. The Honorable Martha Karua, who was here. And Kenyans need to have an opportunity to ask the real questions. So my challenge to the team that is here and every other person conducting such meetings is, let us start asking these leaders reasonable and meaningful questions, because at the end of the day, when the vote happens, they become the leaders. But if we miss out on the opportunity to ask the critical questions, we'll end up with mediocre and insignificant leadership. Thank you. And because of time, I beg to end at that. And once again, Hilary and the team, job well done. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And I wish all of us who ask questions will have the courage to ask the men hard questions. Sometimes I feel like we really are mean on the leaders who are ladies who've not stolen from us. Nobody asked the people of Kirinyaga about their NOIS. Anyway, Linus, your last comments and make it very short because you spoke before. Then we can close the show, Linus.
Thank you so much, Redemptor. Mine is also equal to register appreciation to the team, Redemptor, Hilary, and Abdi, for a job well done. I just wish to reiterate what I said earlier, because Prof mentioned something that we should go home with altogether, that if you're not careful by mid-2026, then Kenyans will revert back to their tribal cocoons and their bad mannerisms. And this is why I said that we need everybody on deck. We need the bravery of Karua, we need the wittiness of Professor Kibwana, we need the agility of Omtata, we need the forthrightness of Dr. Milton, we need the thoroughness of Mizani, we need the wisdom of Okayo, the good mannerisms of Hilary. All these, we need them on deck. So, as I said earlier, the line of progress is never straight. So much will be thrown our way, as has been done before. So much will be said about the opinions, about the ideas, but the major task that we have between now and the change that we aspire to achieve is to ensure, as Italy put it, that how do we get collected together so that we do not lose anyone? How do we get, because there are so many people going to express interest, how, given that now Okayo is here, how do we get all these persons together, put them on one table, and get a formidable candidate? Because what Professor Kibwana said touched me, that there's a likelihood, I think Orengo made mention of it, there's a likelihood of Raila coming back to contest in 2027. There's a likelihood of Ruto sponsoring another candidate to weaken the movement in 2027. We must be ready to overcome all this. And the only way, we only have one way, is to keep the fire burning, to keep ourselves glued together, and do not miss our focus on the ball. Otherwise, I thank you so much, and I'm very proud to be associated with this space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linus. I think I will not make my final submissions because I am on the driver's seat. I just want to thank everybody who has been on this show and allow Abdi to make his final submissions, and then Hilary can close the show. Thank you. I have already said enough. Asanteni.
Thank you, Redemptor. Thank you for all the work you have done. I'll also be very brief. Thank you all for your valuable contribution tonight. I think it's very clear that Kenya is at a defining moment in its history on economic, political,